On Christmas morning, I opened a gift from my wife's family. It was my missing wristwatch from last year, the only thing left of my father. I thought I lost it. Her sister laughed and said, "Oh, I forgot I took that." When I confronted her, my mill said, "Don't start drama over a watch." That night, I quietly packed a bag. The next day, my wife woke me up screaming, "What did you say to her?" You know what they say about the best laid plans? Yeah, well, mine just got absolutely obliterated by the cosmic joke that is my family. Here I am, standing in what was supposed to be the crown jewel of my 32 years on this godforsaken planet, my brand new apartment that I busted my ass to afford, and I'm having what you might generously call a moment. Let me paint you a picture of how this train wreck unfolded. I spent the entire morning scrubbing every single corner of this place until it practically sparkled like something out of those home improvement shows my mom's always glued to. We're talking hands and knees, toothbrush in the grout, kind of cleaning here, people. I even bought one of those fancy all-purpose cleaners that costs more than my weekly grocery budget because, hey, tonight was supposed to be special. The candles? Strategically placed throughout the living room like I'm some kind of interior design genius. Vanilla and sandalwood, classy stuff, not those cheap dollar store numbers that smell like a chemical factory explosion. Fresh flowers from the farmer's market downtown, the kind that make you feel like you've got your life together even when you're secretly eating cereal for dinner 3 nights a week. I arranged them in this vase I'd been saving for months, the one I found at that antique shop, and thought, someday, when I have people over, this'll look perfect. And the food? Jesus Christ, the food. I went full Gordon Ramsay on this spread. We're talking homemade lasagna that took 4 hours to prep, garlic bread that I actually made from scratch instead of buying those frozen hockey pucks from the grocery store, Caesar salad with real Parmesan that I grated myself like some kind of culinary saint. I made enough to feed a small army because that's what you do when your family's coming over, right? You make sure there's plenty because God forbid someone goes home hungry and then spends the next week telling everyone how stingy you are. This whole shindig was supposed to be my victory lap, my look what I accomplished without any help from anyone moment. After years of living in that shoebox apartment where the neighbors sounded like they were training for the WWE championships every night at 2 a.m., I finally had my own place. A real place. 2 bedrooms, updated kitchen, a balcony that actually fits more than a single folding chair. Hell, I've even got a dishwasher that doesn't sound like it's summoning the devil every time I run it. So there I was, dressed in my good shirt. You know, the one I save for job interviews and funerals, checking my phone every 5 minutes like some lovesick teenager waiting for a text back. 6 o'clock came and went. Then 7. By 8, I'm starting to think maybe I got the time wrong. Even though I sent the invitation 3 weeks ago and followed up with a group text last Sunday. You remember Sunday, right? The day my dear brother Martin was supposed to be totally free and wouldn't miss it for the world. The candles are burning lower, casting these weird shadows that make the apartment feel more like a funeral home than a celebration. The lasagna is getting that crusty edge that happens when it sits in the oven too long on warm, and I'm standing there like an idiot, checking the time on my phone for the 100th time. That's when the doubt starts creeping in. You know the feeling, that cold, slimy sensation in your gut that whispers maybe you're not as important as you thought you were. Maybe that group chat where everyone was so enthusiastic was just politeness. Maybe "we'll definitely be there" is code for "we'll show up if we don't find something better to do." But I'm not ready to give up yet. I mean, Claire's always late to everything. It's practically her trademark. She once showed up to her own birthday party 45 minutes after it started because she lost track of time getting her nails done. And my parents? They're probably stuck in traffic or helping my sister with something. There's always something with my sister. 9 o'clock rolls around, and that's when I make the mistake of opening social media. You know what they say about curiosity killing the cat? Well, consider me officially deceased. There it is, in living color on my phone screen. Photos from Martin's impromptu fishing trip. And not just Martin. Oh no, that would be too simple. There's Claire, grinning like she just won the lottery, holding up some pathetic-looking base like it's the catch of the century. My parents are in the background, Dad with his arm around Mom, both of them looking happier than I've seen them in months. My sister Jessica's there too, making duck faces at the camera because apparently she never mentally graduated from 2009. The timestamp on the first photo? 4:30 this afternoon. Which means they all bailed on my housewarming to go fishing. Fishing. Not a wedding. Not an emergency. Not even a decent excuse like food poisoning or a flat tire. They chose standing around in waders, getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, over celebrating the biggest achievement of my adult life. I scroll through the comments, each one a tiny knife twist in my chest. Looks like such a blast. Family time is the best time. Jealous of this crew. Not a single person asked where I was. Not one comment that said, "Hey, isn't James supposed to be celebrating his new place tonight?" The silence in my apartment becomes deafening. The refrigerator hum that I barely noticed during the day now sounds like a freight train. The upstairs neighbor's TV, which I can usually tune out, might as well be broadcasting directly into my living room. Even the candles seem to mock me with their cheerful flickering, like they're saying, "Look how festive we are for your pity party, population 1." I walk over to the kitchen island where all this beautiful food is laid out like an offering to gods who decided not to show up. The lasagna's developing that sad, dried-out look that screams, "Leftover Tuesday." The salad's wilting despite my best efforts with the fancy dressing I splurged on. The garlic bread's gone cold and hard, probably suitable now only for feeding pigeons or using as hockey pucks. And then, just when I think this night can't get any more humiliating, my phone buzzes with such violence I nearly drop it. The screen lights up with a message that makes my blood run cold. "Claire, we need to talk now." Not, "Sorry we missed your party." Not, "Something came up." Not even a bullshit excuse about traffic or feeling sick. Just, "We need to talk now." Like I'm some employee who's been caught stealing from the petty cash box. I stare at those 5 words until they blur together. The audacity is breathtaking, really. They ghost my housewarming party to go fishing with my golden boy brother, post it all over social media like they're proud of ditching me, and then have the nerve to demand my immediate attention when it's convenient for them. Standing there in the glow of my own pathetic celebration, surrounded by enough food to feed the family that couldn't be bothered to show up, I feel something shift inside me. It's not sadness anymore. That passed about an hour ago. It's not even anger, though there's plenty of that simmering under the surface. It's something colder, sharper, something that tastes like clarity and feels like the first breath of air after being underwater too long. Because for the first time in my 32 years of being the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who always shows up, I'm starting to understand something important. Maybe it's time to stop showing up for people who can't be bothered to show up for me. So here I am, staring at my phone like it just grew tentacles and started speaking Mandarin. "We need to talk now." 5 little words that somehow managed to carry the weight of 32 years of being everyone's reliable backup plan. The sheer balls on these people, I swear to God. You want to know what's really rich about this whole situation? Not a single one of them could spare 30 seconds to text me, "Hey, something came up, can't make it tonight," before they all piled into Martin's truck for their spontaneous fishing adventure. But now it's suddenly urgent. Now I'm supposed to drop everything and dance to their tune like some kind of trained monkey. My phone starts ringing immediately because apparently "we need to talk now" means "answer your damn phone this instant, James." Claire's contact photo pops up. That selfie she took last Christmas where she's wearing that ridiculous Santa hat and grinning like she just discovered the secret to world peace. Looking at it now, all I can think is how fake that smile looks. How many times has she smiled at me like that while planning to screw me over? I let it ring, and ring, and ring some more. There's something almost therapeutic about watching her name flash on my screen while I do absolutely nothing about it. For once in my life, I'm not jumping through hoops the second someone demands my attention. Revolutionary concept, right? The voicemail notification pops up, followed immediately by another call. This time it's Dad, and his contact photo is just as irritating. Him in his favorite fishing vest, the one he wears like it's some kind of uniform that proves he's more outdoorsy than the rest of us mere mortals. I decline that one too, and it feels almost as good as the first time. Then the texts start flooding in like a digital tsunami of guilt and manipulation. "Claire, James, answer your phone." "Dad, son, this is important." "Mom, please call us back. We need to explain." Even Jessica gets in on the action. "Just pick up. It's about Martin." Of course it's about Martin. Everything's always about Martin. Martin the charmer, Martin the free spirit, Martin, the golden child who can do no wrong even when he's doing everything wrong. I should have seen this coming from a mile away. They didn't ditch my housewarming just for fun. They ditched it because precious Martin needed their attention for something, and naturally, his needs trumped my celebration. I walk over to my kitchen island and pour myself a glass of wine from the bottle I'd opened to celebrate with my family. The irony isn't lost on me that I'm now drinking it alone while they blow up my phone from whatever bar they probably hit after their fishing expedition. The wine tastes expensive because it was expensive, because I wanted tonight to be special, and now every sip feels like I'm drinking liquid vindication. My chest feels heavy, like someone's sitting on it. It's this weird combination of hurt and anger that I can't quite shake. Part of me, the part that's been trained through decades of family dynamics to be the good son, the reliable one, the peacekeeper, wants to just answer the damn phone and find out what crisis Martin has stumbled into this time. Because let's be real, it's definitely a crisis. Martin doesn't inspire family emergency meetings because he won the lottery or got promoted at work. But there's this other part of me, this quiet voice that's been getting louder over the past few hours. That's saying something different. It's saying, wait, make them explain. For once in your life, don't just roll over and accept their version of events. Don't let them steamroll you into feeling guilty for being hurt that they abandoned you. The notifications keep stacking up like digital daggers. Missed call after missed call, voicemail after voicemail, text after increasingly frantic text. My phone's practically having a seizure from all the incoming messages. It's almost funny how quickly their tone shifts from demanding to pleading. James, please. We're worried about you. Just let us explain what happened. What happened? I'll tell you what happened. You all made a choice. You looked at your calendars, saw that you had two options: support your son/husband/brother at his housewarming party, or go fishing with Martin, and you chose Martin. You didn't even have the courtesy to lie about it. You posted photos like you were proud of your decision. I'm pacing around my apartment now, stepping over the discarded party supplies that earlier today seemed so hopeful and now just look pathetic. The balloons I hung are starting to lose their helium, drooping sadly like deflated dreams. The "Welcome to my new home" banner I spent 20 minutes positioning perfectly now feels like a cruel joke. That's when I hear the knock at my door. Not the confident rap of someone who belongs here, but this tentative little tap that screams awkward neighbor interaction. I look through the peephole and see Mrs. Garcia from across the hall, holding what looks like a plate covered with aluminum foil. She's in her 70s, this sweet lady who always says hello in the elevator and asks about my job like she actually cares about the answer. I debate pretending I'm not home, but something about her kind face makes me open the door. She's standing there in her flowered housecoat and slippers, looking genuinely concerned. James, Mijo, I was just wondering, did your party get canceled? She's looking past me into the apartment, and I can see her taking in the untouched spread of food, the lonely candles still burning, the decorations that scream celebration for one. I try to force a smile, but it feels like I'm wearing someone else's face. Oh no, Mrs. Garcia. Just running a little late, you know how it is. But she's not buying it. She's lived long enough to recognize bullshit when she sees it, and her face softens with this expression that's somehow worse than anger or disappointment. It's pity. Pure, unadulterated pity. She's looking at me like I'm a lost puppy that got left in the rain. Oh, sweetheart, she says, and those two words carry more genuine concern than I've heard from my own family all night. She holds out the plate. I made extra empanadas. Thought maybe your guests might enjoy them. I take the plate because what else can I do? Thank you. That's really thoughtful. My voice sounds strange even to me, like it belongs to someone else. She pats my arm gently. You know, Mijo, sometimes the people who should show up for us don't. But that doesn't mean you're not worth showing up for. And just like that, this woman I barely know has summed up everything I've been feeling in one simple sentence. After she goes back to her apartment, I stand there holding her empanadas, and something inside me crystallizes into absolute clarity. They had their chance. They chose fishing over family, my family, specifically. They chose Martin's drama over my achievement. They chose to humiliate me publicly and then expect me to be available the second they needed something from me. Well, guess what? For the first time in my adult life, I'm not available. I'm not jumping when they say jump. I'm not answering their calls or responding to their increasingly desperate texts. I'm going to let them sit with the consequences of their choices for once. My phone buzzes again. Claire, naturally. James, please. We know you're upset, but this is bigger than tonight. I read the message twice, then set my phone face down on the counter. Because you know what? Tonight was big to me, and they missed it. They don't get to decide that their emergency trumps my pain just because it's convenient for them. The quiet voice in my head isn't so quiet anymore. It's practically shouting, make them wait. Make them explain. Make them understand what it feels like to be ignored when you need someone most. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Morning comes whether you want it to or not. And let me tell you, I spent most of the night staring at my ceiling like it held the secrets to the universe. My phone sat on the nightstand like some kind of digital time bomb, buzzing intermittently with voicemails and texts that I refused to acknowledge. By the time dawn crept through my blinds, I'd counted exactly 17 missed calls and 23 unread messages. A new personal record in family harassment, if we're keeping score. I shuffled to the kitchen in my boxers and old college t-shirt, stepping over the remnants of last night's disaster. The candles have burned down to little waxy puddles. The flowers are starting to droop despite my efforts to keep them fresh, and the smell of cold lasagna hangs in the air like a memorial to my misplaced optimism. It's like a crime scene. Except the only thing that died here was my faith in my family's basic human decency. Coffee first, existential crisis second. That's my motto. I'm standing there watching the coffee maker do its thing, trying to pretend that my hands aren't shaking slightly from a combination of caffeine withdrawal and suppressed rage, when my phone starts ringing again. Claire's face pops up on the screen, that same Christmas photo that looked fake yesterday and looks even faker today. Something in me snaps. Maybe it's the way the morning light is hitting all the untouched food. Or maybe it's the fact that I've had 8 hours to really marinate in my anger, but I decide enough is enough. I swipe to answer, and before she can even get a word out, I'm already on the offensive. Oh, so now you want to talk? My voice comes out rougher than I expected, probably because I spent half the night grinding my teeth. After posting your fishing trip all over Facebook like some kind of victory lap? There's a pause. And when Claire finally speaks, her tone is shaky in that way she gets when she knows she's screwed up, but is trying to maintain some semblance of control. James, listen, we need to explain what happened. It's about Martin. He's in serious trouble with money. And there it is. The magic words that are supposed to make everything okay, that are supposed to justify why my entire family ghosted me on one of the most important nights of my life. Martin's in trouble. Martin needs help. Martin. Oh. Let me guess, I say, pouring my coffee with more force than necessary, some of it splashing onto the counter. Golden Boy made some questionable financial decisions, and now everybody needs to rally around him like he's some kind of war hero instead of a 35-year-old man who can't balance a checkbook. James, don't be like this. You know it's more complicated than. More complicated than what? More complicated than showing up to your husband's housewarming party? More complicated than sending a text saying you can't make it? More complicated than basic human courtesy. I can hear her breathing on the other end. That frustrated sigh she does when she thinks I'm being unreasonable. It's the same sigh she gave me when I complained about spending Christmas at Martin's house 3 years running, or when I suggested we might celebrate my birthday for once instead of making it all about whoever else needed attention that week. Look, she says, and I can practically see her running her fingers through her hair. Martin owes some serious money to some serious people. We're talking about his safety here. We told him you'd help because you're good with money. You're responsible. You have your life together. Oh, so now I'm responsible? I'm pacing around my kitchen island, and I catch a glimpse of myself in the reflection of my microwave. I look unhinged, which is probably accurate. Now I'm the one with my life together? Funny how those qualities only matter when you need something from me. That's when I hear Dad's voice in the background, and Jesus Christ, he's actually there. They're tag-teaming me. This isn't just Claire calling to apologize or explain. This is a coordinated assault. I can picture them huddled around her phone like they're planning a military operation, probably in Martin's living room, probably surrounded by whatever expensive toys he bought instead of paying his bills. Dad's voice gets louder, like he's moving closer to the phone. James, stop being dramatic. You know we care about you, but this is serious. Martin could lose his house, his business, everything. You're the stable one, son. You need to step in here. The stable one. The responsible one. The reliable one. All these labels they've pinned on me over the years. Labels that apparently only matter when they need my wallet or my problem-solving skills. Where were these compliments when I graduated college? When I got my first promotion? When I saved up enough money to buy my own place? Nowhere. That's where. But the second their precious Martin screws up, suddenly I'm the family hero they need to save the day. Step in. I'm laughing now, but it's not a happy sound. It's the kind of laugh you hear in movies right before someone has a complete breakdown. Step in like how you all stepped in for me last night. Oh wait, that's right. You stepped right past me and into Martin's fishing boat. That's not fair, Claire says, and her voice is getting that edge to it. That means she's shifting from apologetic to defensive. We explained that Martin needed us yesterday. He was having a panic attack about his situation. We couldn't just leave him alone. But you could leave me alone. The words come out flat, matter of fact. You could leave me standing in my apartment with enough food to feed 10 people, waiting for my family to show up and celebrate the biggest accomplishment of my adult life. That was totally fine. James, come on. It's just a party. We can celebrate your apartment anytime. Martin's problems can't wait. Just a party. Just a party. I set my coffee mug down so hard it's a miracle it doesn't shatter. Just a party? Claire, do you have any idea how long I saved for that apartment? How many weekends I worked overtime? How many dinners out I skipped? How many times I bought generic everything just so I could afford the down payment? Of course I know, but... Do you know what I spent on food for last night? What I spent on decorations, on cleaning supplies, on making everything perfect because I wanted to share this moment with the people who are supposed to matter most to me. Silence. Do you know how it felt to stand there for 4 hours, checking my phone, making excuses in my head for why you weren't there yet, only to find out that you were all having a grand old time taking pictures without me? More silence, but I can hear Dad saying something in the background that sounds like, just tell him we'll make it up to him. Make it up to me. Like this is something that can be fixed with a rain check or a dinner out. Like my feelings are some kind of inconvenient speed bump on the way to solving Martin's problems. Here's what's going to happen, I say, surprised by how calm my voice sounds. You're going to hang up this phone, and you're going to think really hard about whether Martin's financial crisis is more important than your marriage. And Dad, if you're listening, you're going to think about whether your golden child's latest screw-up is worth losing your other son. James, don't be ridiculous. Nobody's losing anybody. We're family. Family shows up, Claire. Family keeps promises. Family doesn't choose fishing over celebrating each other's achievements and then call the next morning demanding favors. I can hear Dad's voice getting louder, more insistent. Stop being selfish, James. This is bigger than your hurt feelings. Martin could lose everything. And that's when something inside me doesn't just snap, it completely obliterates. Selfish? Selfish? I've spent 32 years being the opposite of selfish. I've been the dependable one, the stable one, the one who cleans up everyone else's messes while never asking for anything in return. And the one time I ask you all to show up for something that matters to me, I'm being selfish. The words are pouring out of me now like a dam burst, and I can't stop them even if I wanted to. You want to know what's selfish? Ditching your husband's housewarming party to go fishing. What's selfish is posting photos of your fun family day while I'm sitting alone wondering what I did wrong. What's selfish is calling me up the next morning, not to apologize, but to demand that I bail out the brother who couldn't even be bothered to wish me congratulations on my new home. James, I'm not done. My voice is steel now, cold and sharp. What's selfish is 32 years of making Martin the center of the universe while treating me like I'm just some supporting character in his story. What's selfish is expecting me to drop everything and save him from consequences he created for himself while never once acknowledging that I might need support too. Dead silence on the other end. So no, Claire. No, Dad. I'm not stepping in. I'm not being the reliable one this time. You made your choice yesterday, and now you get to live with it. And for the first time in my adult life, I hang up on my family. You'd think that hanging up on your family for the first time in your life would feel more satisfying, but honestly, it just left me feeling hollow, like I'd been carrying around this massive weight for so long that now that it's gone, I don't know how to stand up straight anymore. I spent the rest of the morning rage cleaning my apartment, scrubbing dishes that were already clean, reorganizing closets that were already organized, basically doing anything to keep my hands busy so my brain wouldn't have time to second-guess what I'd just done. By afternoon, I'd almost convinced myself that maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should call Claire back and apologize for losing my temper. You know how it is when you're programmed from birth to be the peacekeeper. Even when you're completely in the right, there's this nagging voice that says you're being the problem. That voice got real quiet real fast when I heard the knock on my door around 6 p.m. Not Mrs. Garcia's tentative little tap this time. This was confident, familiar, the kind of knock that says, I belong here, and I'm coming in whether you like it or not. I look through the peephole, and there she is, Claire, standing in the hallway with that smile plastered on her face. Not her genuine smile, mind you, but that practiced, saccharine thing she pulls out when she needs something. The smile that says, I'm about to manipulate you, and we both know it. But let's pretend this is all very pleasant. She's dressed to kill, too. Not in her usual jeans and t-shirt combo, but in that blue dress I complimented her on last month, the one that brings out her eyes. Her hair's done up in that style she knows I like, and she's even wearing the perfume I bought her for our anniversary. The whole 9 yards. This isn't Claire the wife coming to have an honest conversation. This is Claire the actress coming to give a performance. I debate not answering, just like I did with the phone calls, but something morbid in me wants to see how this plays out. So I open the door and lean against the frame, not stepping aside to let her in. If she wants to do this, we're doing it in the doorway where the whole hallway can hear. Hey, baby, she says, and that fake sweetness in her voice makes my teeth hurt. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. You know, check out the new place properly. In the neighborhood. Right. We lived 20 minutes apart, and there's absolutely nothing in my neighborhood she'd have any reason to visit. But sure, let's pretend this is some casual, spontaneous visit. Little late for the housewarming tour, don't you think? I say, not moving from my position in the doorway. That was supposed to happen yesterday. Remember yesterday? Her smile falters for just a second, but she recovers like the pro she is. James, don't be like that. I know you're upset about last night, but let me explain. It wasn't personal. Martin was having a complete breakdown. He called Dad crying, actually crying, about losing his house. We couldn't just ignore that. But you could ignore me. It's not the same thing, and you know it. She takes a step closer, and I catch a whiff of that perfume. It used to make me weak in the knees. Now it just smells like desperation. Your party was a celebration. Martin's situation was a crisis. You understand the difference, right? The condescension in that last question makes my jaw clench. Oh, I understand perfectly. My achievements don't qualify as crises, so they go to the bottom of the priority list. Got it. That's not what I meant. She's still smiling, but it's getting more strained by the second. Look, can we not do this in the hallway? Let me come in, we'll open a bottle of wine, and we can talk about this like adults. Like adults. As if I'm the one being childish here. As if standing up for myself and refusing to be walked all over is somehow immature. Adults keep their commitments, Claire. Adults don't ghost their family members and then show up the next day pretending nothing happened. That's when I hear footsteps in the stairwell, heavy and deliberate. Dad appears around the corner, and I swear to God, it's like watching a bad sitcom unfold. He's got that expression on his face that I know all too well. The one that says, I'm disappointed in you and you're about to hear all about it. James, he says, his voice carrying that boom that used to make me snap to attention when I was 12. We need to talk. We already talked this morning, Dad. I thought I made myself pretty clear. He walks up behind Claire, and now I've got both of them standing in my hallway like some kind of intervention squad. Dad's wearing his serious face, the one he used to pull out when he'd catch me and Martin fighting his kids. Except back then Martin was never the one getting lectured. What you made clear, Dad says, is that you're being selfish and stubborn. Martin needs help, and instead of stepping up like families should, you're throwing a tantrum because we missed your party. Throwing a tantrum. A fucking tantrum. Like I'm some 5-year-old having a meltdown in the cereal aisle instead of a grown man who's finally had enough of being treated like an afterthought. You know what, Dad? You're right. I am throwing a tantrum. Want to know why? I push off from the doorframe and stand up straighter. Because in 32 years, this is the first time anyone in this family has had to deal with me being anything other than perfectly accommodating. And you can't handle it. Claire jumps in before Dad can respond. probably sensing that this is going sideways fast. James, honey, please. Don't take it personally. Martin's situation really is serious. We told him you'd help because you're so good with money. You're dependable. You always come through. You're the responsible one. The responsible one. There it is again, that label they love to slap on me when they need something. Not when I'm graduating college. Not when I'm getting promoted. Not when I'm buying my first home. Just when Martin screws up and they need someone to fix it. Dependable. I repeat, tasting the word like it's something bitter. You know what else is dependable? The sun rising every morning. Gravity keeping you anchored to the ground. Death and taxes. But you don't celebrate those things, do you? You just expect them to be there. Dad's face is getting red now. That vein in his forehead starting to throb the way it did when I was a teenager and he was about to ground me. Stop being dramatic, James. This isn't about you. That's the problem, Dad. It's never about me. When was the last time anything in this family was about me? When was the last time you called to see how I was doing? Not because you needed something, but because you actually cared? The silence that follows is deafening. Dad's mouth opens and closes like he's trying to find words, and Claire's looking back and forth between us like she's watching a tennis match. When was the last time you acknowledged any of my accomplishments without immediately shifting the conversation to Martin? When was the last time you showed up for something that mattered to me? Still nothing. I bought this apartment, Dad, with my own money, after years of saving and sacrifice. Do you know what that means to me? Do you have any idea how proud I am of this place? Of course we're proud of you, son, but nothing. You're proud of me in theory, but when it comes to actually showing up and celebrating with me, suddenly there are more important things to do. There's always something more important when it comes to me. Claire tries to step forward, but I raise my hand to stop her. You left me alone on the night I needed you most, and now you want me to save the brother who couldn't even be bothered to congratulate me. You want me to bail out the golden child who spent his whole life having everyone else clean up his messes. James, you're being unfair. No, Claire. Unfair is what you did to me. Unfair is 32 years of making me feel like I don't matter unless someone needs something from me. Unfair is standing here in my hallway, wearing the dress you know I like and the perfume I bought you, trying to manipulate me into forgetting how badly you hurt me. Dad's voice drops to that dangerous quiet tone he used to use when he was really angry. That's enough. You're talking to your wife, not some stranger on the street. Show some respect. Respect. I almost laugh. Where was the respect when you all decided Martin's fishing trip was more important than my housewarming? Where was the respect when you posted photos of yourselves having fun while I was sitting here alone? We made a mistake, okay? Claire's voice is getting higher, more desperate. We made a mistake, and we're sorry. But we can't change what happened, and right now Martin needs our help. Your help. You're his brother. And you're my wife. But that didn't stop you from choosing him over me yesterday. I can see tears starting to form in her eyes, but I'm done being moved by her tears. I've spent too many years caving every time she cried. Too many years letting her emotional manipulation override my own needs. Here's what's going to happen. I say, my voice steady and calm. You're going to leave. Both of you. You're going to go back to Martin and tell him that the dependable, responsible brother he couldn't be bothered to show up for isn't available to solve his problems. Dad steps forward, his chest puffing out like he's about to physically intimidate me into submission. You don't get to turn your back on family, James. That's not how this works. Family. I look him straight in the eye. Dad, when exactly did I become family to you? Because from where I'm standing, I've been more like an employee. Someone you call when you need a job done, but not someone you actually care about. That's not true, and you know it. Do I? Then prove it. Tell me one thing, just one thing, that you've done for me in the past year that wasn't because you needed something from me. The silence stretches between us like a chasm, and I can see the exact moment when Dad realizes he can't answer that question. His face goes from angry to confused to something that might be shame, but I'm not sticking around to find out. That's what I thought. I say quietly. You don't get to rewrite this story anymore. You made your choice yesterday when you chose Martin's fishing trip over my celebration. Now you get to live with the consequences. And for the second time in 2 days, I close a door on my family. Except this time, it's literal, and it feels a hell of a lot more final. You know that scene in zombie movies where the hero thinks they've finally found safety, but then the undead start pouring out of every crack and crevice? Yeah, That's basically what my life became over the next few days. Except instead of flesh-eating monsters, it was my extended family launching a coordinated guilt campaign that would make a military strategist weep with envy. It started the morning after I slammed the door on Claire and Dad. My phone buzzed at 7 a.m., which, by the way, should be illegal unless someone's literally dying, and it was Aunt Susan. Sweet Aunt Susan, who sends me birthday cards with $20 bills inside and always asks about my job at family gatherings like she actually cares about my boring corporate life. "James, honey," she said in that syrupy voice that immediately put me on high alert. "I heard about the situation with Martin. Your poor parents are beside themselves with worry." Poor parents. Right. The same parents who couldn't spare an evening to celebrate my biggest life achievement, but somehow found the time to canvass the entire family tree looking for reinforcements in their guilt war. "Morning, Aunt Susan," I said, because I was raised with manners even if the rest of my family apparently wasn't. "What situation would that be?" "Oh, don't play coy, sweetie. We all know Martin's in a bind, and family needs to stick together during times like these. Your mother called me crying last night." "Crying, James. She's so worried about both her boys." "Both her boys? That's rich, considering one of her boys has been completely ignored for the past 32 years, while the other one has been treated like some kind of golden god who can do no wrong. But sure, now she's worried about both of us." "I'm sure she is," I said, not bothering to hide the sarcasm in my voice. It must be really hard for her to see Martin facing consequences for his actions for once. "James, that's a terrible thing to say about your brother. He's struggling, and instead of helping him, you're being, well, cold." That's not the James the first no. Cold. There's that word again, the one Claire threw at me yesterday. Funny how quickly I went from dependable and responsible to cold the second I stopped being their personal ATM and emotional punching bag. The calls multiplied like rabbits on steroids. Uncle Bob, who I haven't spoken to since Christmas 3 years ago, suddenly felt compelled to lecture me about family loyalty. Cousin Jennifer, who blocked me on Facebook after I pointed out that her MLM scheme was basically a pyramid scheme, was now sliding into my DMs with sob stories about Martin's situation. Even my grandmother, my 90-year-old grandmother who can barely work her TV remote, somehow managed to leave me a voicemail about how disappointed she was in my selfishness. The voicemail from Grandma was particularly brutal. "James, sweetie, I don't understand what's gotten into you. Martin has always looked up to you as his big brother. He needs you right now, and you're turning your back on him. That's not how I raised your father, and it's not how your father raised you. Family comes first, always. Call Martin. Fix this. Always looked up to me." That's a good one, Grandma. Martin looked up to me the same way a leech looks up to its host, with appreciation for what I could provide, not respect for who I am as a person. But the real masterpiece came from Cousin Tommy, who drunk dialed me at 11 p.m. on Wednesday. Tommy, who once borrowed $500 from me for car repairs and then posted Instagram stories from Vegas that same weekend. Tommy, who has never paid back a dime to anyone in the family, but somehow feels qualified to lecture me about financial responsibility. "Dude, what the fuck is wrong with you?" he slurred into the phone. "Martin's about to lose his house, and you're just gonna let it happen? That's fucked up, man. That's really fucked up." "Tommy," I said, glancing at my clock and wondering why I even answered. "When's the last time you helped Martin with anything? When's the last time you helped anyone in this family with anything? That's not the point, bro. I'm not the one with money. You're the successful one. You're supposed to take care of shit like this." Supposed to take care of shit like this. According to who? According to the family charter that apparently designated me as the official cleanup crew for everyone else's disasters? The handbook I never received that outlined my responsibilities as the stable, dependable, boring one? By Thursday, I was starting to feel like I was trapped in some kind of psychological warfare experiment. Every social media notification made me cringe. Every phone call sent my blood pressure through the roof. They were relentless, coordinated, and absolutely shameless in their manipulation tactics. The worst part? They were all using the same script. Family comes first. Martin needs you. Don't be cold. This isn't like you. It was like they'd all attended some kind of guilt-tripping seminar and graduated with honors. At work, I was a wreck. I couldn't concentrate on anything, kept checking my phone obsessively, and probably looked like I was having some kind of breakdown. Which, Let's be honest, I probably was. That's when Daniel noticed. Daniel's this guy from accounting who I've worked with for about 3 years. Nice enough dude. Keeps to himself mostly, but he's got this way of seeing through bullshit that I've always appreciated. We're not best friends or anything, but we grab lunch sometimes and complain about office politics and terrible management decisions. You look like someone ran over your dog, he said, sliding into the chair across from me in the break room, where I was staring at my sandwich like it held the meaning of life. Family issues, I said, which was becoming my standard response to anyone who asked why I looked like a walking disaster. Daniel nodded knowingly. The kind where everyone suddenly becomes an expert on your life decisions? I looked up at him, surprised by how accurately he'd nailed it. Something like that. Let me guess, he said, opening his own lunch. Someone in your family screwed up, and now everyone expects you to fix it because you're the responsible one. The air quotes he made around responsible told me everything I needed to know. This guy had been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. My brother, I admitted. Financial trouble. Bad financial trouble. And apparently it's my job to bail him out because I have my shit together. And when you said no, suddenly you became the villain. Exactly. It felt good to talk to someone who understood without me having to explain the whole sordid history. Daniel took a bite of his sandwich, chewed thoughtfully. You know what I learned when my sister went through her drug phase, and everyone expected me to fund her recovery for the 4th time? What? That being the stable one in a dysfunctional family is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because you actually have your life together. It's a curse because everyone else treats that stability like it belongs to them. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, but in a good way. Like someone had finally put into words what I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. The thing is, Daniel continued, they're not really asking you to help your brother. They're asking you to enable the same pattern that got him into trouble in the first place. They want you to rescue him so they can all go back to pretending that his problems aren't really problems. But they keep saying I'm being cold, that I'm turning my back on family. Daniel laughed, but it wasn't mean. Of course they do. Because if you're the cold one, then they don't have to examine their own behavior. If you're the one being unreasonable, then they can all feel good about themselves while they pressure you into fixing everything. He leaned forward, his expression getting more serious. Can I ask you something? When's the last time any of these people calling you cold actually showed up for something that mattered to you? The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. I thought about my housewarming party, about all the times I'd invited family to work events or personal celebrations, about all the times I'd gotten generic excuses or outright no-shows. That's what I thought, Daniel said, reading my expression. They're not angry because you're being cold, James. They're angry because you're finally setting boundaries, and boundaries make people who are used to walking all over you very uncomfortable. That night, I sat in my apartment, my beautiful, hard-earned apartment that no one in my family had bothered to celebrate with me, and really let Daniel's words sink in. The phone kept ringing, the texts kept coming, the voicemails kept piling up. But for the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't feeling guilty about ignoring them. I was feeling something else entirely. Something that tasted like freedom and felt like the first deep breath after being underwater for 32 years. Because Daniel was right. This wasn't about family loyalty or being cold or any of the other bullshit they were throwing at me. This was about power. About who gets to make decisions and who gets stuck dealing with the consequences. About who matters and who doesn't. And for the first time in my life, I was choosing to matter. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen in the quiet spaces between all the chaos. That night, after Daniel's reality check and another round of guilt-laden voicemails from relatives I hadn't heard from since the Bush administration, I found myself standing in my home office, staring at the filing cabinet like it held the secrets to the universe. It's funny how certain objects can suddenly take on this almost mystical significance. This particular filing cabinet, a boring gray metal thing I bought at Office Depot for $49, had been sitting in the corner for months, just holding paperwork and insurance documents and all the other mundane stuff that comes with being a functional adult. But tonight, it felt like a treasure chest. I pulled open the top drawer with this weird sense of ceremony, like I was about to perform some kind of ritual. Past the utilities folder, past the car insurance papers, past all the regular life maintenance documents, until my fingers found the manila folder labeled apartment purchase in my own neat handwriting. Inside that folder was everything. Every bank statement, every loan document, every receipt and record of the most significant financial achievement of my life. But there, right on top, was the piece of paper that mattered most, the deed to my apartment, officially recorded with the county, legally binding proof that James Monroe owned something real and substantial in this world. I pulled it out and just held it for a moment, feeling the weight of the paper between my fingers. It's such a simple thing, really, just black text on white paper, a bunch of legal language that most people would find boring as hell. But to me, in that moment, it might as well have been the Declaration of Independence. There it was, in bold letters that seemed to jump off the page, James Monroe. Not James and Claire Monroe. Not James Monroe with co-signer assistance from his parents. Just my name, standing alone, claiming ownership of something I'd earned entirely through my own effort. I thought about the journey to that moment. The 2 years of eating ramen noodles and generic cereal, so I could save every possible penny for the down payment. The weekends spent working overtime while Martin was out partying or going on spontaneous road trips funded by family handouts. The Friday nights I stayed home instead of going out because every dollar I didn't spend was a dollar closer to my goal. I remembered the day I made the final payment, how I'd sat in the bank manager's office signing what felt like 1,000 documents, how surreal it felt to hand over a check for that much money and know that I wasn't going into debt for it. I'd saved enough to buy the place outright. No mortgage, no monthly payments to some faceless corporation, no strings attached to anyone or anything except my own hard work. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, the boring one, the responsible one, the one who supposedly didn't know how to have fun or live life to the fullest, and I'd managed to accomplish something that none of my more exciting family members had ever come close to achieving. At 32, I owned my home free and clear while Martin was about to lose his because he couldn't manage his finances well enough to make mortgage payments. I walked over to my kitchen counter and spread the deed out under the bright overhead lights, smoothing out the creases where it had been folded in the filing cabinet. Then I pulled out my phone and carefully positioned it to capture the entire document, making sure the letterhead was visible, making sure my name stood out clearly, making sure every official seal and signature was in frame. The photo came out perfect. Crystal clear, professional looking, undeniably authentic. I stared at it for a long moment, thumb hovering over the screen as I composed the caption in my mind. I wanted something simple but powerful, something that would speak for itself without being too obvious about what I was really doing. Built this life on my own. Some stories tell themselves. Short, sweet, and loaded with meaning for anyone who knew the context. I wasn't mentioning Martin directly, wasn't throwing anyone under the bus explicitly, wasn't even referencing the drama of the past few days. I was just sharing a fact, a simple, documented, legally certified fact about my life and my achievements. But I didn't post it. Not yet. Something held me back, some instinct that told me this was a weapon I could only use once, so I better make sure the timing was right. Instead, I just sat there holding my phone, looking back and forth between the photo and the actual deed, feeling this strange combination of pride and power that I'd never experienced before. For 32 years, I'd been living my life according to other people's expectations and definitions of success. I was the reliable one, the stable one, the one who didn't cause drama or make waves or demand attention. I was the supporting character in everyone else's story, the one who showed up when needed and disappeared into the background when the excitement was over. But this deed told a different story. This piece of paper was proof that I wasn't just the family cleanup crew or the emergency contact for when things went wrong. I was a person who set goals and achieved them, who made sacrifices and saw them pay off, who built something lasting and meaningful entirely through my own efforts. I thought about all the times Martin had mocked my boring lifestyle. The jokes about my budgeting spreadsheets, my meal planning, my reluctance to blow money on spontaneous trips or expensive toys. The way he'd roll his eyes when I declined to go out drinking because I was saving for something important. The way the whole family had treated my financial discipline like some kind of character flaw instead of a strength. Well, look who's laughing now, Martin. Look whose boring lifestyle resulted in actual security and independence, and whose exciting lifestyle resulted in begging family members for bailouts. I picked up the deed again, running my finger along the edge of the paper. This wasn't just a legal document. It was proof of independence. Proof that I didn't need anyone else's approval or assistance to build a life worth living. Proof that all those years of being overlooked and undervalued had actually been years of becoming stronger and more self-sufficient than any of them. The phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Claire's name flashed on the screen, and for a split second, I felt that old familiar urge to answer, to smooth things over, to be the accommodating husband who never caused problems. But then I looked at the deed in my other hand, and that urge died a quick death. Let it ring. Let her wonder what I'm thinking, what I'm planning, what I might do next. For once in my life, I was holding all the cards, and I wasn't in any hurry to show my hand. I carefully folded the deed and put it back in the filing cabinet, but I kept the photo on my phone. My ace in the hole. My proof that James Monroe was nobody's backup plan or emergency fund. I was a man who'd built something solid and lasting, and I'd done it without anyone's help. The power of that realization was intoxicating. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't worried about what my family thought of me or whether I was living up to their expectations. I had concrete, legal, undeniable proof that I was doing just fine on my own. Better than fine, actually. I was thriving. While they'd been too busy celebrating Martin's latest adventure to notice my achievements, I'd been quietly building the kind of life that most people only dream about. Financial independence, a beautiful home, career stability, all the things that Martin's exciting lifestyle had failed to provide him. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat down at my kitchen table, looking around at the apartment I'd worked so hard to afford. Every piece of furniture, every appliance, every decoration had been chosen and purchased by me. No family loans, no co-signers, no strings attached. This was my space, my sanctuary, my proof that the boring, responsible James Monroe was actually the most successful member of his family. And tomorrow, if the guilt campaign continued, if the pressure kept mounting, if they kept calling me cold and selfish for refusing to bail out their golden boy, I had something they couldn't argue with or dismiss or minimize. I had proof that their version of my story was complete bullshit. The quiet confidence that came with that knowledge felt better than any family approval I'd ever received. Because this wasn't dependent on their recognition or validation. This was just true, whether they acknowledged it or not. And soon, everyone would know exactly how true it was. Sometimes the universe has this twisted sense of timing that would be hilarious if it wasn't happening to you. I'd been sitting on that photo of my apartment deed for 3 days, carrying it around in my phone like a loaded weapon I wasn't quite ready to fire. But Friday afternoon, while I'm trying to focus on quarterly reports and pretending my personal life isn't a complete dumpster fire, my phone rings with a number I haven't seen in about 2 years. Martin, my dear brother Martin, calling me directly for the first time since. Actually, I can't remember the last time Martin called me for anything that wasn't borrowing money or asking for a favor. I stare at his contact photo, some selfie he took on a ski trip that Dad paid for, all perfect teeth and expensive sunglasses, and debate whether to answer. Part of me is curious to hear what his angle is going to be, whether he'll try the guilt approach or go straight for emotional manipulation. Curiosity wins, so I swipe to answer. Well, look who remembers my phone number. James. His voice sounds rough, like he's been crying or hasn't slept, and despite everything, there's this tiny part of me that actually feels bad for him. 32 years of conditioning don't disappear overnight, apparently. We need to talk. Do we? Because last I checked, you needed to go fishing instead of celebrating your brother's new apartment. Funny how your priorities keep shifting. There's this long pause, and when he speaks again, his voice is cracked and broken in a way I've never heard before. Look, I know you're pissed about the housewarming thing. I get it. We fucked up, okay? But James, I'm drowning here. I'm literally about to lose everything. And what exactly does that have to do with me? You're my brother. The words come out like a desperate plea. You can't just let me drown. We're blood, man. That has to count for something. Blood. Right. The same blood that apparently meant nothing when I needed my family to show up for one night. The same blood that's been thin as water every time I've needed support or recognition or just basic acknowledgement of my existence. Was I your brother when you chose fishing over my housewarming? I ask, and my voice is so calm it surprises even me. Because I distinctly remember checking my family status that night, and it seemed to have been revoked. Come on, don't be like that. You know that was different. I was having a panic attack about all this shit, and Dad thought getting me out on the water would help clear my head. So you had a panic attack, and the solution was to take the entire family fishing and post about it on social media? That's some next-level therapy right there, Martin. It wasn't like that. What was it like then? Because from where I'm sitting, it looked like you decided your feelings were more important than my celebration, and everyone else agreed with you. Like always. The silence stretches between us, and I can hear him breathing heavily on the other end. James, please. I'm begging you here. These people I owe money to. They're not the kind of people who take no for an answer. I could lose my house, my business, everything I've worked for, everything he's worked for. That's rich. Martin's business is some half-assed contracting company that he runs out of his garage, taking on jobs he's not qualified for, and then scrambling to fix his mistakes when they inevitably go wrong. The house he's about to lose? Dad co-signed for that mortgage because Martin's credit was already shot from previous financial disasters. Tell me something, Martin, I say, leaning back in my office chair. When you posted all those photos from your fishing trip, did it occur to you how that might make me feel? Did you think for even 1 second about your brother sitting alone in his new apartment, waiting for his family to show up? We weren't thinking about that. We were just trying to help me deal with. You weren't thinking about me. Period. You never think about me unless you need something from me. And now you need something from me. So suddenly, I'm your brother again. That's not fair. Fair. I'm laughing now, but it's not a happy sound. You want to talk about fair? Fair would be your family showing up to celebrate the biggest achievement of your brother's life. Fair would be getting a congratulations text or a phone call, or literally any acknowledgement that you're proud of what I accomplished. Fair would be not having to find out through Facebook that my entire family chose someone else over me. Martin's quiet for a long moment, and when he speaks again, his voice is barely a whisper. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm really, truly sorry about the housewarming. We should have been there. I know that now. You're sorry now? Now that you need money from me. How convenient. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, Martin. You're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry that hurting me might interfere with getting what you want from me. I hang up before he can respond, and immediately my hands are shaking with this combination of adrenaline and rage and something that feels almost like relief. Because finally, I said what I've been thinking for years instead of just swallowing it and playing the role of the understanding, supportive brother. That's when I decide it's time. I pull up the photo of my apartment deed, the one I've been carrying around like ammunition, and I look at it again. Clean, professional, undeniable proof of what I've accomplished entirely on my own. No family loans, no co-signers, no safety net except my own hard work and discipline. I open Facebook and create a new post, uploading the photo and typing the caption I've been refining in my head for days. Built this life on my own. Some stories tell themselves. My finger hovers over the post button for about 10 seconds. Once I do this, there's no taking it back. Once this goes live, everyone will see exactly what James Monroe has been up to while they were all focused on Martin's latest drama. I hit post. Within minutes, the likes and comments start pouring in. Friends from work, college buddies I haven't talked to in years, neighbors, even Mrs. Garcia from across the hall who apparently knows how to use Facebook better than I thought. Holy shit, James. You bought that place outright? Dude, this is incredible. Congratulations. Wait, you own that apartment? No mortgage? How did you swing that? This is amazing. I'm so proud of you. Comment after comment of genuine excitement and congratulations, the kind of response I should have gotten from my family when I actually bought the place. The kind of response I was hoping for at my housewarming party that nobody attended. But it's the private messages that really get to me. Daniel from work, fucking legend. I knew you had something up your sleeve. Oliver, my old college roommate who I haven't talked to in months. Bro, I always knew you'd be the one to make it. This is incredible. Even my high school friend Sarah. I saw this and literally said holy shit out loud in the grocery store. You're amazing. For the first time in my adult life, I'm getting the recognition and validation that I deserve, and it's coming from people who actually know me and respect me, not from people who only pay attention when they need something. But the real fireworks start about an hour later. My phone starts buzzing with notifications from family members commenting on the post, and their tone is different. Gone is the casual dismissal of my achievements, the backhanded compliments, the subtle undermining that's been the soundtrack of my life for 32 years. Claire's comment is the first one I see. We're so proud of you. Can't wait to celebrate properly. Too little, too late, sweetheart. Then Dad, that's my boy. Always knew you had it in you. Really? Because your actions have suggested otherwise for the past 3 decades. But it's the private messages that really tell the story. Claire texts me, take it down. You're humiliating us. Then, a few minutes later, people are asking questions about why we weren't at your housewarming. This is embarrassing. Embarrassing. Not, we're sorry we hurt you. Or, we realize we made a mistake. Just, this is embarrassing for us. Because even now, even when faced with undeniable proof of their shitty behavior, they can only think about how this affects them. I type back, funny. I said the same thing when you humiliated me by choosing Martin's fishing trip over my celebration. The response is immediate. That's different, and you know it. No, Claire. That's exactly the same thing. The only difference is that this time, everyone gets to see the truth instead of just me feeling it. More messages flood in from other family members. Aunt Susan, this post is causing problems. Family business should stay private. Uncle Bob, take this down before it causes more drama. Even Grandma, bless her heart. I don't understand all this computer stuff, but your mother says you're causing trouble. Causing trouble by sharing my achievements, by celebrating my success, by refusing to hide the fact that I accomplished something significant while they were all too busy fawning over Martin to notice. But the best part, the absolute cherry on top of this whole beautiful disaster, comes at the end of the day when my phone rings with a call from Martin himself. You son of a bitch, he says without preamble, and his voice is shaking with rage. Do you have any idea what you've done? I shared a photo of my apartment deed. You know, that thing I earned by working my ass off instead of relying on family handouts. People at my work are laughing at me. They're saying I'm pathetic for needing money from my little brother who has his shit together better than I do. And that's my problem, Hal. Take it down, James. Right fucking now. No. Take it down or what? You'll throw another tantrum? You'll get the family to gang up on me again? You'll miss another one of my important moments while you deal with your feelings? The silence on the other end is deafening. Here's the thing, Martin. I continue, and my voice is steady as steel. For 32 years, I've been editing my life to make you feel better about yours. I've downplayed my achievements, hidden my success, and accepted scraps of attention while you got the feast. But I'm done with that now. James, the post stays up. The truth stays public. And if that embarrasses you or makes you uncomfortable or hurts your feelings, then maybe you should have thought about that before you spent 3 decades treating me like I didn't matter. I hang up, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I feel completely, utterly, absolutely free. You know what they say about the truth? It has this nasty habit of spreading like wildfire once it gets loose. My little Facebook post might have seemed like just one guy sharing a photo of his apartment deed, but apparently I'd lit a fuse that was connected to a much bigger powder keg than I'd realized. The first sign that something major was shifting came Sunday morning when I'm at the grocery store, minding my own business in the cereal aisle, and I run into Mrs. Henderson from church. Now, Mrs. Henderson is what you might generously call the neighborhood information hub, meaning she knows everyone's business and isn't shy about sharing it. Normally, she gives me this polite but distant smile and maybe asks how my mother's doing. This time, she practically tackles me by the Cheerios. James Monroe, she says, loud enough that half the store can hear her. I saw your post online, and I have to say, good for you. It's about time someone called out your family for how they treat you. I'm standing there holding a box of generic cornflakes, wondering how the hell Mrs. Henderson is friends with me on Facebook, when she leans in conspiratorially and drops this bombshell. You know, we all noticed when your family didn't show up to your housewarming. The whole congregation was talking about it during coffee hour. Such a shame, really. Here you are, buying your own place at your age, no help from anyone, and they can't even be bothered to celebrate with you. The whole congregation. Jesus Christ. I knew small towns had their gossip networks, but I didn't realize my family's dysfunction had become Sunday morning entertainment for the entire Methodist Church. It's been quite a week, I managed to say, because what else do you say when your personal life becomes community theater? Oh, I bet it has, she says, patting my arm like I'm some kind of wounded bird. But you know what? Sometimes it takes a little public embarrassment to make people realize how badly they've been behaving. Mark my words, your brother Martin's going to be feeling this for a while. She's not wrong about that. Over the next few days, I start hearing through the grapevine just how far the ripple effects of my little truth bomb have spread, and honestly, it's more devastating than I could have imagined. Apparently, Martin's co-workers at the construction company where he does contract work had seen my post and put two and two together. Here's Martin, going around for weeks talking about how his family was going to help him out of his financial jam, how his reliable little brother was good for it, how blood is thicker than water, and all that bullshit. And then boom, there's his reliable little brother posting proof that he's successful enough to buy property outright, while Martin can't even keep up with his mortgage payments. The jokes started immediately, according to my friend Jake, who works in construction and knows some of Martin's crew. Hey Martin, maybe you should ask your little brother for budgeting lessons. Damn, Martin, your brother's got his shit together better than you do, and he's younger. Maybe next time you should skip the fishing trip and go to your brother's housewarming. Might pick up some tips on not being broke. But it gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. Claire's book club. Yes, my soon-to-be ex-wife has a book club, and no, they don't actually read books, they just drink wine and gossip, had also seen the post. And according to my neighbor Janet, who's married to a guy whose sister is in said book club, Claire had been bragging for months about how successful and stable I was, how lucky she was to have such a reliable husband, how we were planning to start a family soon now that we had the perfect home. Except now everyone knew that we hadn't bought anything. James Monroe had bought something, and he'd done it without any help from his wife, who couldn't even be bothered to show up and celebrate with him. The same wife who was now publicly asking him to take down posts about his own achievements because they were embarrassing to her. The book club ladies, according to Janet's sister-in-law, had started asking pointed questions. If James is so successful and you're so proud of him, why weren't you at his housewarming? Did you know he could afford to buy a place outright? Are you guys having problems? You seem to spend a lot of time at your brother-in-law's events instead of celebrating your husband's accomplishments. Claire, apparently, had left the last book club meeting early and hadn't been answering her phone when the ladies tried to check on her. But the absolute masterpiece of unintended consequences came through my old college friend Oliver, who reached out Wednesday night with a story that was so perfect I almost couldn't believe it was real. Oliver works in marketing now, lives about an hour away, and apparently still keeps in touch with some of our mutual college friends through various social media groups. He'd shared my post in one of these groups with a comment about how proud he was of me for achieving financial independence so young, and how he'd always known I'd be the one to make it. This caught the attention of Brad, another guy from our college crew who I haven't talked to in probably 5 years. Brad, it turns out, works at the same company where Dad has been employed for the past 15 years. Small world, right? So Brad sees Oliver's post about me, recognizes my last name, puts two and two together, and realizes that James Monroe, the successful apartment owner, is the son of Jim Monroe from the accounting department. Brad, being a decent human being, stops by Dad's office Monday morning to congratulate him on having such a successful kid. According to Oliver, who got this story secondhand from Brad, Dad's reaction was, let's call it complicated. Apparently, he got this weird look on his face and mumbled something about family business, and it's not what it looks like. Then he spent the rest of the conversation trying to change the subject and making excuses for why he hadn't mentioned my recent real estate investment to anyone at work. Brad, who's not an idiot, picked up on the weird energy and started asking questions. Casual questions, the kind you ask when you're trying to figure out why someone's acting sketchy about what should be good news. Questions like, when did James buy the place? And did you guys throw him a housewarming party? And man, he must have been saving for years to afford something like that. Dad's answers, according to Brad's report to Oliver, were evasive and uncomfortable. No, they hadn't thrown a party. Yes, James had been saving for a long time. No, it wasn't really a family celebration, more of a personal milestone. The whole conversation left Brad with the distinct impression that there was some kind of family drama going on, and that maybe Jim Monroe wasn't as proud of his successful son as he should be. Word spreads fast in office environments, especially when someone's acting weird about something that should be straightforward good news. By the end of the week, half of Dad's department had heard some version of the story, and the general consensus was that Jim Monroe's family situation was complicated, and maybe he was jealous of his son's success. The final nail in the coffin came when Oliver called me Thursday night, laughing so hard he could barely get the words out. "Dude," he said, "you have to hear this. Brad told me that your dad actually went to HR today to complain that people were asking too many personal questions about his family. HR told him that congratulating someone on their child's success isn't harassment, and maybe if he acted like he was proud of you, people would stop wondering why he's being so weird about it." I sat there holding the phone, trying to process the beautiful irony of the situation. Dad, who had spent decades minimizing my achievements and prioritizing Martin's drama over my milestones, was now facing professional embarrassment because his coworkers couldn't understand why he wasn't celebrating his successful son. "James," Oliver said, "you still there, man?" "Yeah," I said, and I was smiling so hard my face hurt. "I'm here. I'm just processing. Listen, I don't know what's going on with your family, but I want you to know that everyone who saw your post is genuinely impressed and happy for you. Like, seriously impressed. Most of us are still paying off student loans and living paycheck to paycheck, and here you are owning property free and clear at 32. That's incredible, man. Thanks, Oliver. That means a lot. And whatever drama is happening with your family over this, don't let them make you feel bad about your success. You earned this, and you have every right to be proud of it." After I hung up, I sat in my apartment, my beautiful, debt-free, fully owned apartment, and thought about how quickly things can change when people finally see the truth instead of the story they've been told. For 32 years, my family had controlled the narrative about who I was and what I was worth. I was the boring one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need attention or recognition because that's just how I was. But now that narrative was crumbling, and everyone could see it wasn't based on reality. I wasn't the boring one, I was the successful one. I wasn't the reliable one, I was the independent one. I wasn't the one who didn't need recognition, I was the one who'd been systematically denied it. And now, finally, the whole world could see the difference. 1 week after my little social media truth bomb, they all show up. Not individually this time, not with phone calls or guilt trips or manipulation tactics. The whole damn family arrives at my door like some kind of dysfunctional Avengers squad, and I can hear them arguing in the hallway before they even knock. Through the peephole, it's like looking at a greatest hits collection of my childhood trauma. Mom, Dad, Martin, Claire, even Jessica dragged along for moral support. They're huddled together like they're planning a siege, which, let's be honest, they probably are. The banging starts, aggressive, demanding, the kind of knock that says, "We're not leaving until you open this door." So I do, but I don't step aside. I lean against the frame like I did with Claire before, except this time I'm facing the entire firing squad. "Well," I say, keeping my voice perfectly calm, "look who remembered where I live." The whole family reunion committee. Mom starts crying immediately, because of course she does. Those perfectly timed tears that have been getting her out of accountability for decades. "James, sweetie, we made a mistake. We're here to apologize and work this out as a family." "Apologize?" I almost laugh. "Mom, you've had a week to apologize. Instead, you've been telling me to take down my post because it's embarrassing you." Dad steps forward, his face red with that familiar rage. "We wouldn't be embarrassed if you hadn't aired our family business all over the internet like some kind of attention-seeking." "Stop right there." My voice cuts through his bluster like a blade. "Don't you dare make this about me seeking attention. I shared one photo of my own achievement. The fact that it exposed your shitty behavior isn't my fault." "James, please." Claire tries, reaching toward me, but I step back. "Can we just talk inside? Like civilized people." Civilized people keep their commitments. Civilized people show up when they say they will. Civilized people don't abandon their husband's celebration to go fishing. Martin finally speaks up, his voice cracked and desperate. "Look, I know we screwed up the housewarming thing, but this post is ruining my life. People at work are laughing at me. My clients are asking questions. You're destroying me over one night." "One night." The words come out flat and cold. "Martin, this isn't about one night. This is about 32 years of being treated like I don't matter unless you need something from me." Mom's crying gets louder. "That's not true. We love you. We've always been proud of you. Proud enough to skip my housewarming for Martin's fishing trip. Proud enough to never mention my accomplishments to anyone. Proud enough to treat me like the family ATM whenever there's a crisis." Dad's voice booms through the hallway. Stop being selfish, James. Martin could lose everything because of your petty revenge. Selfish? I feel something snap inside me. You want to talk about selfish? Selfish is ditching your son's celebration. Selfish is 32 years of making Martin the center of the universe. Selfish is standing in my hallway demanding I fix problems I didn't create. The silence that follows is deafening. Here's what's going to happen. I continue, my voice steady as steel. You're going to leave. All of you. You made your choice last week when you chose Martin's drama over my achievement. Now you get to live with the consequences. James, you can't just cut us off, Jessica pleads. We're family. Family shows up. Family keeps promises. Family doesn't treat one member like he's disposable while worshiping the other. I look each of them in the eye. You don't get to rewrite this story anymore. Claire's face crumples. What about us? Our marriage. You made that choice too, Claire. When you chose your brother-in-law over your husband. I start to close the door, but Dad shoves his foot forward. We made one mistake. No, Dad. You made a choice. Every single day for 32 years, you chose Martin over me. Last week was just the first time everyone else got to see it. I closed the door firmly, and this time when they pound and yell and demand I let them back in, I don't budge. Because for the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself over their dysfunction. And it feels like freedom. 3 months later, Thanksgiving arrives like the ultimate test of my newfound backbone. In the past, this would have been the day I'd dutifully show up at Mom's house, bringing the expensive wine and pretending everything was fine while Martin got praised for remembering to bring rolls from the grocery store. This year I'm doing something revolutionary. I'm having my own damn Thanksgiving. My apartment is transformed into something that actually looks like a celebration instead of a desperate plea for attention. The table I bought with my own money is set for 8, with real cloth napkins and the good dishes I splurged on after my social media truth bomb went viral. The smell of turkey, a modest 12-pounder because I'm not feeding an army of ungrateful relatives, fills the air along with homemade stuffing and cranberry sauce that actually required effort. Daniel from work arrives first, carrying a bottle of wine and grinning like he's won the lottery. Man, this place looks incredible. I can't believe you're cooking for all of us. Believe it, I say, feeling genuinely happy for the first time in months. I figured it was time to host people who actually show up when they say they will. Oliver drives in from an hour away, brings his girlfriend Sarah, who I've heard so much about, and immediately starts gushing about my apartment like he's giving a real estate tour. Dude, I still can't believe you own this place outright. You're living the dream. Mrs. Garcia shuffles over from across the hall with her famous flan and a smile that could power a small city. Mijo, this smells better than anything I ever made. You're going to make some lucky woman very happy someday. The irony isn't lost on me that my elderly neighbor has more faith in my future romantic prospects than my soon-to-be ex-wife ever did. Jake shows up with his wife and their baby, who immediately becomes the center of attention in the best possible way. James, I have to tell you, watching you stand up to your family has been inspiring as hell. Half the guys at work have been talking about setting boundaries with their own toxic relatives. We're sitting around my table, laughing about work stories and college memories, when my phone buzzes with a text from my cousin Tommy. Yes, the same cousin who drunk dialed me to call me selfish. The message is a photo of my family's Thanksgiving table, which looks about as cheerful as a funeral reception. Mom's sitting at one and looking like she's lost her best friend, Dad scowling at his plate like the turkey personally offended him, and Martin slumped in his chair with the defeated look of a man whose golden child status couldn't save him from the consequences of his own actions. Claire's there too, apparently, sitting as far from my empty chair as possible. The caption reads, "Not the same without you, man." Mom's been crying all day. I show the photo to Daniel, who nearly chokes on his wine. Holy shit, they look miserable. Good. Is that terrible of me? I ask, though I'm still smiling, that I'm kind of enjoying their misery. Are you kidding? Oliver jumps in. They spent 32 years making you miserable while they celebrated their golden boy. A little taste of their own medicine is long overdue. As if the universe wants to punctuate his point, my phone buzzes again. This time it's a voicemail notification from Claire. I almost ignore it, but curiosity gets the better of me. I step into the kitchen and play it on speaker. Her voice is trembling, heavy with tears, and what sounds like genuine regret. James, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please talk to me. The house feels empty without you. Thanksgiving feels empty. Everything feels empty. I know I screwed up. I know I chose wrong. But please, please don't give up on us completely. I delete the voicemail without hesitation. Because here's the thing I've learned over the past 3 months. Revenge isn't about anger or spite or making people suffer. Real revenge is walking away from people who don't value you and building a life so good that their absence becomes a blessing instead of a loss. I walk back to my dining room where my chosen family is debating whether pumpkin pie or flan is the superior dessert, where people are laughing at my jokes and genuinely interested in my stories, where I'm not the reliable background character, but the host of my own celebration. Standing in my doorway, looking out over this scene of actual happiness and genuine connection, I realize something profound. I don't need their apologies anymore. I don't need their recognition or validation or belated attempts to make things right. I have something better. I have peace. I have people who show up. I have a life I built entirely on my own terms. And that, it turns out, is the sweetest revenge of all. My wife's lover sat in my kitchen, wearing my robe, while my wife explained I needed to accept the new arrangement or leave with nothing. I smiled and started packing. What they'd learn in 72 hours, the house, cars, and accounts weren't community property, they were assets of my hobby. Business worth $10.30 million. You know that feeling when you walk into your own house and suddenly feel like you've stepped into some twisted episode of Trading Spouses that nobody told you you'd signed up for? Yeah, well, welcome to my Tuesday morning, folks. The name's Grayson Luo. I'm 35 years old, and I've just survived what feels like the longest red-eye flight in human history from Seattle back to what I foolishly still call home. My eyes are burning. My back's killing me from sleeping against an airplane window that apparently doubles as a medieval torture device, and all I want is to stumble into my kitchen, pour myself a decent cup of coffee, and pretend that the quarterly reports I've been staring at for the past 6 hours actually make sense. But life, as it turns out, has other plans. Because standing there in my kitchen, scratch that, sitting there like he owns the damn place, is some guy I've never seen before in my life. He's perched on one of my bar stools at the kitchen island like he's holding court, casually spooning what looks suspiciously like my favorite granola into his mouth. And here's the real kicker. He's wearing my bathrobe. My charcoal gray Turkish cotton bathrobe that cost me $200 and took 3 months to break in just right. This stranger is sitting in my kitchen, eating my breakfast, wearing my clothes, and acting like this is the most natural thing in the world. I'm standing there with my carry-on still slung over my shoulder, keys dangling from my fingers like I'm some kind of confused door-to-door salesman who's wandered into the wrong house, when my wife Sabrina finally decides to acknowledge my existence. She doesn't jump up with relief that I'm home safe. She doesn't rush over to give me a hug or ask how the flight went. Hell, she doesn't even look embarrassed that there's a half-naked stranger eating cereal in our kitchen at 7 in the morning. Instead, she just stands there by the coffee maker, arms folded across her chest like she's about to deliver a PowerPoint presentation on quarterly earnings, and drops the bomb that I guess I should have seen coming, but somehow didn't. There's a new arrangement, Gray, she says, and her voice has that cool, practiced tone she usually reserves for explaining to the contractor why the kitchen backsplash isn't quite the right shade of whatever pretentious color she picked out from some designer magazine. You can accept it, stay quiet about it, and we can all coexist like civilized adults. Or you can leave, and you can take whatever personal belongings actually belong to you. The guy in my robe, Trent, as it turns out, because of course his name is Trent, doesn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable. He just keeps chewing my granola and watching me like I'm some kind of fascinating nature documentary. Morning, sport, he says around a mouthful of what I'm pretty sure is the last of my organic blueberry clusters. Hope you don't mind, but Sabrina said you wouldn't be back until later. I set my keys down on the counter with what I hope sounds like calm deliberation rather than the barely controlled shock that's currently running through my system like I've been tasered. I walk over to the coffee maker, stepping around Trent like he's a piece of furniture that someone's inexplicably moved into my kitchen, and pour myself a cup from the pot that Sabrina apparently made for her and her new boyfriend. The coffee's still warm, which means this little domestic scene has been going on for a while. Long enough for them to get comfortable. Long enough for Trent to raid my closet and make himself at home. So, I say, taking a sip of coffee that tastes exactly like it always does, which is somehow the most surreal part of this entire morning. How long has this new arrangement been in effect? I'm proud of how normal my voice sounds, like I'm asking about the weather or whether anyone's seen the remote control. Inside, though, I'm doing calculations, not emotional calculations. Those can wait. I'm doing practical calculations, the kind that involve asset distribution and legal precedents, and the very careful financial planning I've been doing for the past 2 years, while Sabrina's been busy building what she calls her lifestyle brand, and what I call an excuse to spend money we don't technically have. Sabrina looks surprised by my tone, like she was expecting me to start yelling, or maybe break down crying, or do whatever it is that husbands are supposed to do when they walk in on their wife's morning routine with another man. Does it matter? She asks, and there's a little edge creeping into her voice now, like she's annoyed that I'm not following the script she had in her head for this conversation. What matters is that this is how things are now, and you need to decide whether you can handle that like an adult. Trent actually chuckles, and pushes the bowl away from him like he's finished not just with breakfast, but with the entire pretense of treating me like a human being in my own house. Look, buddy, he says, and I have to admire the sheer balls it takes to call me buddy while wearing my bathrobe. I know this is probably a shock and all, but Sabrina and I have been talking, and we think this could actually work out for everyone if you're willing to be reasonable about it. I nod slowly, like I'm actually considering the logistics of whatever bizarre polyamorous sitcom they think they're starring in. Reasonable, I repeat, tasting the word like it's a new kind of coffee blend. That's an interesting word choice. I take another sip and look around my kitchen, at the granite countertops I picked out, at the custom cabinet hardware I installed myself, at the stupid expensive espresso machine that Sabrina insisted we needed and then never learned how to use properly. I'll start packing, I say finally, and the relief that washes over Sabrina's face is almost worth the price of admission to this whole ridiculous show. She actually smiles, like I've just agreed to some reasonable business proposal instead of walking away from 8 years of marriage and everything I thought I knew about my life. Trent grins and leans back in my bar stool like he's settling in for a long stay. Smart man, he says. I was hoping you'd see it that way. But here's the thing that neither of them knows. The thing that's keeping me calm while my wife rearranges my entire existence around some guy who probably thinks my expensive bathrobe came from Target. For the past 2 years, every single major purchase we've made has been funneled through my company, Luo Circular Systems. Every car payment, every mortgage payment, every piece of furniture, and every kitchen appliance. All of it officially belongs to what Sabrina likes to call my little hobby, the eco-packaging business that she spent the better part of our marriage mocking as a waste of time and money. Turns out my little hobby is about to become very, very relevant to both of their futures. And as I watch Trent adjust my bathrobe and Sabrina pour herself another cup of coffee like she's already planning how to redecorate once I'm gone, I take my first mental photograph of this moment. I want to remember exactly how confident they look right now, exactly how satisfied they are with their clever little arrangement. Because in 72 hours, when the legal paperwork starts flying and the asset seizures begin, and they realize that the house they're sitting in doesn't actually belong to the happy couple, I want to remember the look on their faces when they thought they'd outsmarted me that I finish my coffee, rinse the mug in the sink like a polite house guest, and head upstairs to start packing. Behind me, I can hear them already talking about paint colors. This is going to be fun. Let me tell you a little story about how a hobby becomes worth $10 million while your wife is upstairs picking out throw pillows and complaining that you don't network enough at her Pilates instructor's wine nights. See, it all started about 7 years ago in the most glamorous location you can imagine, my garage. Yeah, I know, real Silicon Valley origin story material right there. While Sabrina was inside watching reality shows about people who flip houses for a living, I was out there with a folding table, a laptop that sounded like a dying vacuum cleaner, and an idea that everyone told me was either impossible or completely stupid. The idea was simple, which should have been my first clue that it was going to be anything but simple to execute. I wanted to create packaging that didn't just biodegrade. Hell, any cardboard can do that if you give it enough time and moisture. I wanted to create packaging that was truly circular, meaning every component could be broken down and reformed into new packaging indefinitely, without losing quality or structural integrity. Think of it like the holy grail of the recycling world, except instead of granting eternal life, it would hopefully grant eternal usefulness to what we throw away. The first prototype looked like something a kindergartner might make during arts and crafts time if that kindergartner had access to industrial adhesives and a severe lack of adult supervision. It was lumpy, it smelled weird, and it fell apart if you looked at it wrong. But it worked, sort of, in the same way that a paper airplane technically works even if it immediately nosedives into the ground. I could break it down with a specific enzyme solution I'd developed, and then reform the resulting slurry into new packaging material that was almost as strong as the original. Almost being the key word there, because apparently almost as strong doesn't cut it when you're trying to convince suppliers to trust your weird garage science with their actual products. I spent about 6 months getting laughed out of meetings with guys who wore suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment and who looked at my prototypes like I was trying to sell them snake oil mixed with unicorn tears. Interesting concept, they'd say with the kind of smile you give to a small child who's just explained how they're going to become a dinosaur when they grow up. But we'll stick with what works. What worked, apparently, was continuing to pump out millions of tons of packaging that would outlive cockroaches and probably survive the heat death of the universe. But hey, at least it was cost-effective. Meanwhile, Sabrina was getting increasingly frustrated with what she called my garage phase. She'd come out there sometimes, usually when she was on the phone with one of her friends, and she'd gesture at my setup like it was some kind of elaborate man cave devoted to avoiding responsibility. Gray's having his midlife crisis early, I'd hear her say, and she'd laugh like this was the most charming thing in the world instead of, her husband trying to solve an actual environmental problem while building a business. She liked the idea of having a creative husband in theory, the same way she liked the idea of organic vegetables and yoga retreats and all the other lifestyle accessories that looked good on her carefully curated social media presence. But she wanted creativity that came with immediate social status and preferably a regular income that she could mention at dinner parties. What she didn't want was a husband who smelled like industrial solvents and who kept weird chemicals in the refrigerator next to her overpriced organic kombucha. "This is cute and all," she told me one night while I was explaining how I'd figured out how to increase the structural integrity by adjusting the polymer chain length. "But when are you going to turn this into something real?" By something real, she meant something that would fund her increasing expensive taste in everything from skincare products to weekend getaways to places with names like the Serenity Wellness Collective that charged $300 for what was essentially a fancy nap. The funny thing is, I was turning it into something real, just not in the way she expected. See, while Sabrina was building her Instagram-worthy lifestyle, I was quietly building relationships with suppliers who were getting nervous about the changing regulatory landscape around packaging waste. Turns out that when governments start talking about carbon taxes and extended producer responsibility laws, suddenly that weird guy from the garage doesn't seem quite so crazy anymore. The breakthrough came when I finally got a meeting with a regional grocery chain that was facing some serious public relations problems over their packaging waste. They'd been getting hammered by environmental groups. Their customers were starting to ask uncomfortable questions, and their sustainability coordinator was desperate enough to listen to anyone who claimed to have a solution. I walked into that meeting with prototypes that actually worked, cost projections that actually made sense, and a 3-phase implementation plan that would let them test the waters without betting their entire supply chain on my garage science. That first pilot program was small, just produce bags and deli containers for 3 stores in the Pacific Northwest. But it worked. Not only did it worked better than anyone expected. Customer feedback was positive, the packaging performed exactly as advertised, and most importantly, the company could actually market their commitment to sustainability without sounding like they were just greenwashing their way through another quarterly earnings call. Word gets around fast in the grocery business, especially when you're talking about something that can help companies stay ahead of regulatory changes while potentially saving money in the long run. Within 6 months, I had meetings lined up with suppliers across the West Coast. Within a year, I had my first nationwide contract. And within 2 years, I had something that Sabrina still referred to as my little hobby, but that was generating enough revenue to fund our entire lifestyle and then some. But here's the thing that Sabrina never understood. The thing that she missed while she was busy networking with other wives who treated their husbands' careers like accessories to be coordinated with their handbags. I learned from watching my mother go through her divorce. I watched her discover that all the years she'd spent building what she thought was a shared life with my father had actually been years spent building his life, while her name was conveniently absent from most of the important paperwork. So, I did things differently. I had help from Dr. Sloan Mercer, my old materials science professor who'd gone into consulting and who knew more about corporate structure than anyone had a right to. She helped me design what she called a bulletproof setup, where my personal assets and my corporate assets were kept as separate as possible while still being completely legal and above board. The house we lived in, purchased by Luo Circular Systems as a retreat property for executive use. The cars in our driveway, fleet vehicles leased through the company. Even the furniture and appliances that Sabrina picked out were technically corporate assets, purchased as part of creating an appropriate environment for business entertainment and client meetings. On paper, Sabrina and I owned almost nothing together except what went into our joint checking account, which was just enough to cover day-to-day expenses and her personal spending, but nothing that would qualify as real assets if things ever went sideways. And now, apparently, things were about to go very, very sideways. You want to know when I first realized my marriage was heading south faster than a GPS with a grudge? It wasn't when Sabrina started coming home late with stories that didn't quite add up, or when she suddenly developed an interest in personal growth workshops that seemed to require a lot of overnight stays in expensive hotels. No, the moment I knew we were screwed was when she joined Claudia Reyes's little circle of influence, which was basically like a country club for women who'd perfected the art of looking flawless while slowly destroying everything around them. Claudia Reyes was what you might charitably call a lifestyle guru, and what I would less charitably call a professional manipulator with an Instagram account and a talent for making other women feel inadequate about their perfectly fine lives. She ran these exclusive gatherings that she called elevation sessions, where a carefully selected group of women would get together to discuss things like intentional living and authentic self-expression, which apparently translated to how to completely reorganize your life around getting more attention on social media. Sabrina came home from her first elevation session buzzing with what she called clarity, but what sounded to me like a laundry list of everything that was supposedly wrong with our life together. My clothes were uninspired. My schedule was limiting her growth. My habit of working from home was preventing her from creating the kind of entertaining space she needed to build meaningful connections. Even my coffee-making routine became a problem. Apparently, the way I ground beans in the morning was somehow holding her back from becoming her best self. At first, I figured this was just another phase, like when she'd gotten really into that alkaline water thing, or when she decided we needed to reorganize our entire kitchen according to some feng shui principles she'd read about online. But this was different. This had the systematic thoroughness of someone who'd been given a blueprint for dismantling a marriage and was following it step by step. The complaints escalated gradually, which I'll give Claudia credit for. She clearly understood the importance of pacing when you're convincing someone to blow up their life. First, it was just suggestions about how I could elevate my presentation, which meant spending money we didn't need to spend on clothes I didn't want to wear to impress people I didn't like. Then it became observations about how my energy was affecting Sabrina's ability to step into her power, whatever the hell that was supposed to mean. But the real red flag wasn't the criticism, it was the secrecy. Sabrina had always been pretty open about her social life, partly because she genuinely enjoyed talking about the people she met, and partly because she liked having an audience for her stories about whatever drama was unfolding in her various social circles. Suddenly, though, her phone became off-limits territory. She started stepping outside to take calls, claiming they were just checking in with the girls, but speaking in the kind of hushed tones you usually reserve for planning surprise parties or federal crimes. The late nights started around the same time. Wellness workshops that ran until midnight. Strategy sessions for some undefined project that always seemed to require meeting at wine bars in the city. Sisterhood dinners that left her coming home smelling like expensive perfume and someone else's cigarettes. Even though Sabrina had quit smoking years ago and always complained when other people smoked around her, I'm not an idiot, despite what my current domestic situation might suggest. I could see the pattern forming, and I could have confronted her about it, demanded explanations, made scenes, done all the dramatic husband stuff that probably would have felt satisfying in the moment. But here's the thing about being married to someone who's getting advice from a professional life wrecker. Confrontation just gives them ammunition. It lets them paint you as controlling, paranoid, threatened by their growth. It hands them the narrative they need to justify whatever they're planning to do next. So instead of confronting, I started documenting. Not in a creepy, private investigator kind of way, but in a careful, methodical, this might be important later kind of way. I kept receipts for everything, partly because I'd always been meticulous about our finances anyway, but now with an extra layer of attention to timing and patterns. I noted when she left and when she came home. I paid attention to the charges on our credit cards, not to control her spending, but to understand where she was going and who she was going there with. I also started backing up her text messages, not reading them, mind you, because even I have some boundaries, but making sure they were preserved in case they became relevant later. I documented the wellness trips and the strategy sessions and all the other increasingly elaborate excuses for spending time away from home. I created what you might call an insurance policy, a comprehensive record of our marriage's slow-motion collapse that would protect me if things went the way I was increasingly sure they were going to go. And I did all of this while maintaining what Sabrina would later describe as my disturbing calm. I kept my tone warm when she criticized my clothes. I smiled and nodded when she explained why my work schedule was incompatible with her personal growth. I even wrote the checks for her elevation sessions and wellness workshops, because refusing to pay for the rope she was planning to hang me with would have just accelerated the timeline. The genius of my approach, if I do say so myself, was that I turned her own strategy against her. While she was busy building a case for why our marriage was holding her back, I was busy building a case for why our marriage had been a business partnership with very unequal contributions. While she was documenting my limitations for her elevation circle, I was documenting her financial dependence for my legal team. Because yeah, I had assembled a legal team. Not a divorce lawyer, not yet, but a small group of professionals who understood corporate structure and asset protection and who could help me navigate what was looking more and more like an inevitable separation. My CFO, Noor Haddad, who'd been handling the books for Luo Circular Systems since the early days and who understood better than anyone how our personal and corporate finances were structured. My legal counsel, Marisol Park, who specialized in business law but who also understood the intersection between corporate assets and domestic relations. And later, when it became clear that I was going to need someone who understood operations and logistics, Matteo Irizarry, who could make sure that any transition happened smoothly and according to proper procedures, that I called the whole thing Project Mariner, partly because I liked the naval metaphor of navigating dangerous waters, and partly because I have a weakness for code names that make boring legal work sound like a spy thriller. The plan was simple. If Sabrina decided to blow up our marriage, I wanted to make sure that the explosion was controlled, that it happened on my timeline, and that when the smoke cleared, I'd still have something left to rebuild with. The plan was designed to execute in 72 hours if necessary. 72 hours to secure assets, file paperwork, establish legal precedents, and make sure that whatever new arrangement Sabrina had in mind would have to account for the reality of who actually owned what in our supposedly shared life. That I kept my tone warm and my ledger cold, and I waited. So here we are, back in my kitchen with Trent still wearing my bathrobe like he's auditioning for the role of world's most comfortable homewrecker. And Sabrina is standing there like she's about to present the quarterly results to a board of directors who are definitely not going to like what they're about to hear. The coffee I poured myself is getting cold, but I'm not really drinking it anyway. I'm just holding it because it gives my hands something to do while my brain processes the fact that my wife has apparently decided to restructure our marriage like it's a failing startup that needs new management. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. I say, setting my mug down on the counter with the kind of deliberate care you use when you're trying not to throw things. You want me to accept that Trent here is now part of our household arrangement, and in exchange for my cooperation, I get to continue living in my own house and sleeping in my own bed, assuming that bed isn't otherwise occupied. I gesture toward Trent, who's now leaning back in my bar stool like he's settling in to watch his favorite TV show. Is that about the size of it? Sabrina's face does this thing it always does when she thinks I'm being deliberately obtuse, which is to say it gets that pinched look around the eyes like she's trying to solve a math problem that's slightly too complicated for her skill level. Don't be reductive, Gray, she says, and I have to admire her ability to use corporate buzzwords even when she's essentially asking me to be okay with sharing my wife with a guy who apparently has no qualms about raiding my closet. This isn't about ownership or control or any of those outdated concepts. This is about evolving beyond traditional relationship structures and creating space for authentic connection. Trent nods along like she's just explained the theory of relativity in terms that finally make sense to him. Exactly, he says, and he's got this earnest expression on his face like he genuinely believes he's participating in some kind of revolutionary social experiment instead of just sleeping with someone else's wife. Sabrina and I have been exploring what it means to love without limitations, to create relationships based on genuine compatibility rather than legal contracts and social expectations. I have to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing, because apparently Trent is the kind of guy who can say love without limitations with a straight face while wearing another man's bathrobe and eating another man's breakfast. Love without limitations. I repeat, tasting the words like they're a new kind of wine that I'm not sure I like. That's beautiful, Trent. Really poetic. Did Claudia help you workshop that phrase, or did it come to you naturally? Sabrina's jaw tightens, which tells me I've hit closer to home than she'd like to admit. Claudia has nothing to do with this, she says, but her voice has that defensive edge that means Claudia has everything to do with this, and we all know it. This is about me finally being honest about what I need, about what we both need, instead of pretending that a relationship that stopped working years ago is somehow going to magically fix itself. Years ago, I say, and now I'm genuinely curious about her timeline. When exactly did our relationship stop working, in your professional opinion? Was it when I started the business, or when the business started succeeding, or when it became clear that my little hobby was going to be more than just a way to avoid dealing with my midlife crisis? Trent shifts uncomfortably, like he's starting to realize that this conversation is heading into territory that wasn't covered in whatever preparation sessions he and Sabrina had before I walked through the door. Look, man, he says, and he's trying for that reasonable, just guys talking tone that men use when they're about to say something that's definitely not reasonable. I know this is awkward, but it doesn't have to be adversarial. We're all adults here. We can figure out a way to make this work for everyone. Make this work for everyone. I echo, and I take another sip of coffee even though it's definitely cold now and tastes like disappointment. That's an interesting phrase. What exactly would that look like in practical terms? Do we set up some kind of schedule? Alternate weekends? Color-coded calendars? Sabrina sighs like I'm being intentionally difficult instead of just trying to understand the logistics of whatever polyamorous fever dream she's apparently been planning. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be, she says. The house is big enough. We're all civilized people. There's no reason we can't coexist peacefully if everyone's willing to be mature about it. And that's when I ask the question that I've been building up to since I walked through the door, the question that's going to tell me exactly how much planning has gone into this little domestic revolution. Have you merged your finances already? I ask, and I keep my voice casual, like I'm asking about the weather or whether anyone's seen my reading glasses. The look that passes between Sabrina and Trent is worth the price of admission to this whole circus. It's the look of two people who've been so busy planning the emotional and physical logistics of their new arrangement that they haven't quite gotten around to thinking about the boring practical details, like who's going to pay for the groceries and the utility bills and the mortgage on the house where they're planning to play house. We will this week, Sabrina says finally, and there's something in her voice that tells me this is the first time she's actually said that out loud. The first time she's committed to a specific timeline for combining her life with Trent's in ways that go beyond just sharing a bed and my breakfast cereal. I nod slowly, like this makes perfect sense, like merging finances with someone you've apparently been seeing for however long you've been seeing him is just another item on the to-do list, right between destroy marriage and redecorate living room. That's smart, I say. Financial transparency is important in any relationship, traditional or otherwise. Trent looks relieved that I'm being so reasonable about their plans to restructure my entire existence around their emotional needs. I'm glad you see it that way, he says. I was worried this might get ugly. but you seem like you're handling this really well. Oh, I'm handling it great, I tell him, and I even manage to smile when I say it. In fact, I think this calls for a toast. I raise my coffee mug in a mock salute to new arrangements and financial transparency and love without limitations. They both look pleased, like we've all just agreed on the terms of a business deal that's going to work out well for everyone involved. Sabrina actually smiles, the first genuine smile I've seen from her all morning. I'm going to need 72 hours to collect my things, I say, setting my mug down and pulling out my phone. Is that reasonable? Of course, Sabrina says, gracious in what she clearly thinks is her victory. Take all the time you need. I type 2 words into my phone and hit send. Mariner, go. The response comes back immediately, a lock emoji from Noor. Time to see how much they really know about love without limitations. The first 24 hours of what I'm privately calling Operation Reality Check unfold with the kind of precision that makes me genuinely proud of the team I've assembled over the years. While Sabrina and Trent are probably upstairs picking out his and hers towels and discussing paint swatches, I'm sitting in the passenger seat of Noor's Honda Civic at 6 in the morning, watching her work through a checklist that would make a NASA mission planner weep with joy. Temporary restraining orders filed at 8:15, she says, tapping her tablet with the stylus she insists is more efficient than using her finger, even though I've never been able to tell the difference. Marisol's got 3 judges she can reach out to if we need expedited hearings, but she thinks the paperwork is solid enough that we won't hit any speed bumps unless they try to get creative. Noor Haddad is what you might call a financial assassin disguised as someone's very organized aunt. She's been my CFO since the early days when Luo's circular systems consisted of me, a folding table, and a business plan written on the back of a napkin, and she has the kind of methodical approach to numbers that makes the IRS look sloppy by comparison. She's also got a master's degree in forensic accounting, which turns out to be surprisingly useful when you need to prove that your estranged wife has no legal claim to assets she's never actually owned. What about the personal accounts? I ask, because even though I trust Noor with my financial life, I like to understand exactly what's happening when my world is being systematically reorganized. Frozen as of midnight, she says with the satisfaction of someone who's just executed a particularly elegant chess move. Your personal stipend drops to 0 effective immediately. All payroll advances are suspended, and every internal financial document now carries a watermark that identifies it as proprietary corporate information. She shows me her tablet screen, where what used to be a simple expense report now looks like a classified government document. Anyone who tries to access, copy, or distribute these files without authorization is going to have a very uncomfortable conversation with our legal department. The beauty of the system we've built is that it's completely legitimate. Every step we're taking is documented, justified, and designed to protect corporate assets from unauthorized access or distribution. The fact that these corporate assets happen to include the house where my wife is currently playing newlyweds with her boyfriend is just a happy coincidence that speaks to the importance of proper business planning. My phone buzzes with a text from Matteo Irizarry, our operations lead, who's apparently been up since 5 a.m. pulling audit logs and documentation. Asset provenance chain complete, the message reads. Every major purchase traced back to corporate authorization. Board minutes, purchase orders, insurance filings, it's all buttoned up. Matteo is the kind of guy who gets genuinely excited about organizational charts and proper documentation procedures, which makes him either the most boring person in the world or exactly the kind of person you want on your team when you need to prove that your business has been run according to proper corporate governance standards. Today, I'm going with the latter interpretation. Where are we staying tonight? I ask Noor, because while I'm enjoying the strategic aspects of this operation, I'm also running on about 3 hours of sleep, and I'm going to need somewhere to crash that doesn't involve listening to Sabrina and Trent celebrating their new domestic arrangement. Booked you a room at the Marriott downtown, she says, but you're not staying there. Rafi's bringing takeout to the warehouse office around 7, and we've set up a temporary workspace in the conference room. Better to stay mobile until we see how they react to the first wave of paperwork. Rafi Banner has been my oldest friend since college, back when we were both engineering students who thought we were going to change the world with our brilliant ideas about sustainable technology and our complete ignorance of how business actually works. He's also got the kind of irreverent sense of humor that makes even the most stressful situations feel manageable, which is exactly what I need right now. While I'm getting a crash course in corporate asset protection from Noor, Marisol Park is apparently having a very different kind of morning. According to the updates she's sending to our group chat, she's been on the phone since dawn with various government offices, filing the kind of paperwork that creates legal facts out of what used to be business arrangements. Unauthorized removal of corporate assets is now officially prohibited by court order, reads her most recent message. Any attempt to sell, transfer, or substantially alter property owned by Luo Circular Systems without proper board authorization will result in immediate legal action. The genius of this approach is that we're not doing anything vindictive or punitive. We're just enforcing the corporate governance standards that have been in place all along. The house has always been corporate property. The cars have always been fleet vehicles. The furniture and appliances have always been corporate assets purchased for business purposes. We're just making sure that everyone involved understands these facts clearly, and that any future decisions about these assets go through proper channels. Meanwhile, according to the security system notifications I'm getting on my phone, Sabrina and Trent are having what appears to be a very relaxed morning. The motion sensors show them moving around the house like they own the place, which I suppose they think they do. The kitchen camera catches Trent making coffee in my machine, and I have to admit there's something satisfying about knowing that every cup he drinks is being funded by corporate assets that he has no legal claim to. Around noon, I get a text from Sabrina that makes me genuinely laugh out loud. Gray, the house insurance company, called asking about policy holder verification. Can you call them back? I show the message to Noor, who grins like someone who's just won a particularly satisfying hand of poker. Corporate policy, she says. Insured through the business, managed by the business, claims handled by the business. She's not on the policy because she's not an employee or board member. I text back, corporate matter. Noor will handle it. The response comes back immediately. What do you mean corporate matter? I don't respond, because there's something beautiful about letting people discover the implications of your planning in real time. Besides, I'm getting reports from Jia Kapoor, our operations analyst, about vendor notices that are going out to everyone from the lawn service to the grocery delivery company, politely informing them that Ms. Quinn is not authorized to make changes to any accounts or authorize any charges that BY evening. When Rafi shows up at the warehouse with Thai food and his usual collection of terrible jokes about corporate restructuring, I'm feeling something I haven't felt in months. Optimistic. Not because my marriage is over. That ship sailed the moment I walked into my kitchen and found Trent wearing my bathrobe, but because for the first time in years, I'm not the one reacting to someone else's plan. So, Rafi says, unpacking pad thai and spring rolls while I boot up my laptop. How long do you think it'll take them to figure out that they're living in a house they don't own? Give it another day, I tell him. Tomorrow's when the real fun starts. Day 2 starts with what has to be the most polite home invasion in the history of domestic disputes. At exactly 9 a.m., a moving truck pulls up to my house. Excuse me, to the corporate retreat property currently being occupied by my estranged wife and her bathrobe-wearing boyfriend. And 3 guys in matching uniforms start unloading dollies and moving blankets like they're preparing to relocate a small government office that I'm there to supervise, naturally. Because someone needs to make sure that only the appropriate items are being relocated, and that someone might as well be me. I've got my clipboard, my inventory list, and my most professional, just doing my job expression as I direct the movers toward the garage, where my actual work equipment has been patiently waiting for this moment. Trent comes outside first, still wearing my bathrobe because apparently he's decided to make that his signature look. And he's got this confused expression like he's trying to solve a word puzzle that's slightly too advanced for his skill level. What's going on out here? He asks, and I have to give him credit for maintaining that casual, I belong here tone, even though he's clearly starting to realize that maybe he doesn't understand the situation as well as he thought he did. Just collecting some work equipment, I tell him, gesturing toward the movers who are carefully loading my label printer onto a dolly. Company property, you understand. Can't leave corporate assets sitting around unattended. The label printer is followed by my laser cutter, my heat press, my industrial scale, and about 6 boxes of prototype materials that probably look like the contents of a mad scientist garage sale to anyone who doesn't know what they're looking at. Trent watches this parade of equipment like he's trying to figure out whether this is normal or whether he should be concerned. And I can practically see the wheels turning in his head as he processes the fact that what he probably assumed was a hobby workshop is being treated like actual business infrastructure. Toys, he says finally, like he's trying to convince himself more than me. A lot of toys for a grown man. I smile, the kind of smile you give to someone who's just revealed that they don't understand the difference between a toy and a tool. Yeah, I say. Expensive toys. Sabrina emerges from the house looking like she's dressed for a photo shoot about successful women having casual mornings, which is to say she's wearing the kind of outfit that's supposed to look effortless, but probably took 45 minutes to put together. She surveys the moving operation with the expression of someone who's starting to suspect that the game she thought she was playing might have more rules than she realized. "Gray, what is this?" she asks, and there's an edge in her voice that suggests she's beginning to understand that my agreeable response yesterday might not have been quite as simple as she thought. "Corporate asset recovery," I tell her, consulting my clipboard like I'm reading from a script. Luo Circular Systems needs to consolidate its equipment and materials for an upcoming audit. Standard business procedure. The beautiful thing about having spent 2 years building a legitimate business with proper documentation is that everything I'm saying is technically true. We do have an audit coming up. I scheduled it myself yesterday morning. We do need to consolidate our assets. It's just good business practice. And everything we're moving is genuinely corporate property that has no business sitting in someone's garage indefinitely. While the movers are loading the last of my equipment, Gia Kapoor arrives with what she cheerfully calls the documentation package, which is a 3-inch binder that looks like it could be used as a weapon in a pinch. She's got the kind of methodical approach to paperwork that makes the DMV look efficient, and she's been up since dawn preparing what she calls asset provenance documentation for every major item in the house. Ms. Quinn, she says with the professional courtesy of someone who's about to deliver news that no one wants to hear. I have some documents here that clarify the ownership status of various items on this property. Would you like to review them now, or would you prefer to have your attorney present? Sabrina looks at Gia like she's speaking a foreign language, which in a way she is, the foreign language of proper business documentation and legal precedent that most people never have to deal with until it becomes suddenly, urgently relevant to their lives. What kind of documents? Sabrina asks, and I can hear the first hint of uncertainty creeping into her voice. Gia opens the binder with the reverence of someone unveiling a work of art. Purchase agreements, insurance documentation, board minutes authorizing major expenditures, lease agreements for vehicles, and corporate tax filings showing depreciation schedules for business assets, she says, and she flips through the pages like she's giving a tour of a museum. Everything that clarifies which items are corporate property and which items are personal property. Trent peers over Sabrina's shoulder at the documentation, and I watch his face go through several interesting expressions as he realizes that the house he's been treating like his new bachelor pad is actually a corporate retreat property owned by a business that neither he nor Sabrina has any legal connection to. This is about the house, he says, and it's not a question. Among other things, Gia confirms cheerfully. The residence, the vehicles, most of the furniture and appliances, the art collection, even the espresso machine. All corporate assets purchased for business purposes and properly documented as such. Sabrina takes the binder with the careful movements of someone who's handling something that might explode. She flips through a few pages, and I can see her trying to process the implications of what she's looking at. "Gray," she says finally, and her voice has lost that confident edge from yesterday morning. "We need to talk." Of course, I tell her. My attorney will be in touch to schedule a convenient time for all parties. That's when Claudia Reyes pulls up in her white BMW, because apparently this morning needed one more layer of comedy. She gets out of her car like she's making an entrance at a charity gala, all flowing scarves and designer sunglasses, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having had to deal with actual consequences for anything. "Sabrina, darling," she calls out, completely ignoring the moving truck and the boxes of corporate assets and the general atmosphere of a life being systematically reorganized. "I brought those color swatches for the kitchen redesign we discussed." I offer to pour her a cup of coffee from the corporate espresso machine, because I'm nothing if not hospitable to guests on corporate property. She declines with the kind of dismissive wave you give to service staff, which tells me everything I need to know about how she views my role in whatever renovation fantasies she and Sabrina have been cooking up. Actually, I tell her, you might want to hold off on those kitchen plans for a bit. Property management decisions need to go through the corporate board now. The look of confusion on Claudia's face is almost worth the price of admission to this whole circus. She glances around at the moving operation, at Gia's binder full of documentation, at Sabrina's increasingly pale complexion, and I can practically see her trying to figure out how the script for this morning got changed without anyone telling her. I text Nor, stage 2. Her response is immediate. Vendor notices going out now. Time to see how they handle the next wave of reality. You know what's beautiful about process servers? They show up exactly when they're supposed to. They don't care about your personal drama, and they have zero interest in hearing explanations about why maybe this isn't a convenient time for legal documents. At exactly 9:12 a.m. on day 3 of what I've started thinking of as the Great Domestic Restructuring, there's a knock on the front door that has the kind of official authority that makes everyone within earshot suddenly very interested in what's about to happen. I'm parked across the street in Nor's Honda, drinking coffee from a thermos and watching the whole thing unfold like it's the season finale of my favorite TV show. Sabrina answers the door in her yoga pants and that confused morning expression that people get when they're expecting the UPS guy, but instead get someone in a cheap suit, holding a leather portfolio that clearly contains documents no one wants to receive. Miss Quinn? Mr. Alder? The process server says, and his voice carries that perfect blend of professionalism and complete indifference to whatever chaos he's about to unleash. I have some documents for you. He hands over 2 thick envelopes, the kind that government offices use when they want to make sure you understand that whatever's inside is serious business that requires your immediate attention. Sabrina takes hers like she's handling a live snake, while Trent just stares at his like he's trying to figure out whether opening it will somehow make the situation worse. Notice to vacate corporate premises. The process server continues in that same matter-of-fact tone. Cease and desist regarding unauthorized use of corporate assets and divorce filing. You've been served. And that's when Marisol Park steps out from behind the process server like she's been waiting in the wings for her cue. She's wearing her best courtroom suit and carrying her briefcase like it contains the secrets of the universe. And she has that expression that lawyers get when they're about to explain why you're completely and thoroughly screwed. Ms. Quinn, Mr. Alder, she says with the kind of professional courtesy that somehow manages to sound more threatening than any amount of yelling could. I'm Marisol Park, counsel for Luo Circular Systems. Per the filings on public record, this residence is owned by Luo Circular Systems, LLC, and is designated as Executive Retreat Housing for business purposes. You are currently guests at will, and that arrangement is being terminated effective immediately. Sabrina looks like someone who's just discovered that what she thought was a friendly game of poker was actually a professional tournament with stakes she can't afford. This is ridiculous, she says, but her voice has that shaky quality that means she's starting to understand that maybe it's not ridiculous at all. This is community property. We've been married for 8 years. Marisol opens her briefcase with the precise movements of someone who's done this dance before and knows exactly which documents need to come out in which order. Actually, she says, extracting a folder that's thick enough to use as a doorstop, community property law applies to marital assets, not to corporate assets that are owned by a legally separate business entity. She spreads the documents out on the porch like she's dealing cards, and I can see from across the street that she's got everything we've been preparing for the past 2 years. Purchase agreements showing the house was bought by Luo Circular Systems. Insurance documentation listing the company as the policyholder. Board minutes approving the purchase as a business investment. Tax filings showing depreciation schedules for corporate real estate. Corporate entity. Trent repeats, like he's trying out a foreign phrase that he doesn't quite understand. What corporate entity? Marisol looks at him with the patience of someone explaining basic math to a particularly slow student. Luo Circular Systems, LLC, she says. Mr. Luo's eco-packaging company, which currently employs 12 people, holds patents on 3 manufacturing processes and generated approximately $10.3 million in revenue last fiscal year. The number hits them like a physical blow. Sabrina actually takes a step backward, and Trent's face goes through several interesting color changes as he processes the fact that the hobby he's been dismissing for the past 2 days is apparently worth more money than he's likely to see in his entire lifetime. 10 million, Sabrina says, and her voice is barely above a whisper. 10.3, Marisol corrects helpfully. According to the most recent third-party valuation, which was completed last month by Morrison and Associates for insurance purposes. Trent tries to rally, because apparently he's the kind of guy who doubles down when he's losing. Okay, fine, but there has to be some kind of community property claim, he says. They were married when he built this company. She must have some kind of ownership stake. Marisol gives him the kind of smile that defense attorneys probably practice in the mirror. That's an interesting theory, she says. Unfortunately, corporate law doesn't work that way. MS. Quinn is not listed as a founder, officer, board member, or shareholder of Luo Circular Systems. She has never been employed by the company, never contributed capital, and never participated in management decisions. Her only connection to the corporate assets is that she was granted permission to reside in corporate housing as part of her marriage to the majority shareholder. She pulls out another document, and I can see even from across the street that it's covered in official-looking stamps and signatures. Marriage certificate aside, she continues, there's no legal basis for claiming ownership of assets that were acquired, developed, and maintained through a separate corporate entity that predates the marriage and operates independently of any marital relationship. Sabrina looks like she's trying to solve a math problem that keeps changing every time she thinks she's got the answer. But I live here, she says, and there's something almost desperate in her voice. This is my home. Corporate housing, Marisol corrects gently, which you've been permitted to use at the discretion of the property owner. That discretion is being withdrawn. Trent goes for the reasonable guys talking business approach, which tells me he still doesn't understand how far outside his depth he's gotten. Look, this seems like something we could work out through negotiation, he says. Maybe we could arrange some kind of reasonable timeline, discuss compensation for improvements, figure out a solution that works for everyone. Marisol gives him the look that experienced attorneys reserve for people who think they can negotiate their way out of gravity. Mr. Alder, she says, I'm going to suggest that you direct any further communications through your own legal counsel. As of this moment, your trespassing on corporate property and continued presence here could result in additional legal complications that I'm sure you'd prefer to avoid. She closes her briefcase with the finality of someone who's just concluded a successful business meeting. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises, she says. After that, we'll be working with local law enforcement to ensure compliance with the court orders. As she walks back to her car, I can see Sabrina and Trent standing on the porch like two people who've just been told that the ground they're standing on doesn't actually exist. They're holding their legal documents and staring at each other with the expressions of people who are beginning to understand that maybe they didn't think this whole thing through quite as thoroughly as they thought they had. I finish my coffee and text Marisol. How'd they take it? Her response comes back immediately. About as well as expected. See you at the office in an hour. Wouldn't miss it. I reply, time for phase 2. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, we're all sitting around my dining room table like we're about to negotiate a hostile corporate takeover, which I suppose in a way we are. The difference is that usually in hostile takeovers, both sides come prepared with actual leverage, whereas Sabrina and Trent have shown up with what appears to be a combination of wounded indignation and the kind of confidence that comes from fundamentally misunderstanding your position. That Sabrina's brought her own attorney, a guy named Richard Steinberg who specializes in family law and who clearly thought he was walking into a standard divorce proceeding where the biggest challenge would be figuring out how to split up the furniture and the 401k. Instead, he's sitting across from Marisol with a legal pad that's mostly blank and the expression of someone who's beginning to realize he might be outgunned. Trent, meanwhile, has decided to represent himself, which tells me everything I need to know about his understanding of the legal system and his assessment of his own intellectual capabilities. He's got a yellow legal pad too, and he's been taking notes like he's attending a particularly challenging college lecture, which in a way I suppose he is. I slide a single sheet of paper across the table, and I have to admit there's something deeply satisfying about the way their faces change as they read it. It's the executive summary from our most recent third-party valuation, the one that Morrison and Associates completed last month, when we were updating our insurance coverage. The number at the bottom is printed in bold, $10.3 million. That's the current fair market value of Luo Circular Systems. I explain, like I'm presenting quarterly results to a board of directors who already know the company is performing well. Based on revenue projections, intellectual property portfolio, manufacturing capacity, and existing contracts with major retailers. Sabrina stares at the paper like it's written in a language she doesn't recognize. $10 million, she says, and her voice has that hollow quality that people get when they're trying to process information that doesn't fit with their understanding of reality. 10.3. I correct, because precision matters when you're discussing the systematic dismantling of someone's assumptions about their financial future. The valuation was conservative, according to Morrison. They think we could see 15 to 20 million within 3 years if the regulatory environment continues to favor sustainable packaging solutions. Steinberg clears his throat like he's about to object to something. Even though we're not in a courtroom, and there's nothing to object to except the uncomfortable reality of documented facts. Mr. Luo, he says, while these numbers are certainly impressive, the question of marital property division is more complicated than just corporate valuation. Nor, who's been sitting quietly with her laptop open and several thick folders arranged in front of her like she's prepared to fight a war with spreadsheets, finally speaks up. Actually, she says with the cheerful precision of someone who genuinely enjoys explaining financial concepts to people who don't want to hear them. It's not complicated at all. She opens her laptop and turns it around so everyone can see the screen, which displays what looks like a corporate organizational chart crossed with a family tree. Luo Circular Systems is a limited liability company organized under Delaware state law. She begins, and she's got that patient tone that accountants use when they're explaining why your brilliant tax avoidance scheme won't work. Mr. Luo is the majority shareholder with controlling interest. The company has 12 employees, maintains facilities in 3 states, and operates independently of any personal relationships or marital arrangements. She clicks to the next slide, which shows a timeline of major corporate milestones overlaid with personal relationship events. The company was founded 2 years before Mr. Luo's marriage to Ms. Quinn, she continues. All major assets were acquired through corporate funding. All intellectual property was developed using corporate resources, and all business relationships were established and maintained through corporate channels. Trent's been scribbling notes like he's trying to find some kind of loophole in basic corporate law. But she's been married to him for 8 years, he says, like marriage somehow grants automatic ownership rights to whatever your spouse happens to be doing with their time. Doesn't that count for something? Marisol gives him the kind of smile that criminal defense attorneys probably use when explaining plea bargains to clients who still think they're going to beat the charges. Marriage creates community property rights, she says, but only for assets that are actually part of the marital community. Corporate assets that are properly segregated and maintained according to legal business structures remain corporate assets. She opens one of her binders and pulls out a document that's covered in official seals and signatures. MS. Quinn has never been an employee, officer, board member, or shareholder of Luo Circular Systems, she says, running her finger down a list that apparently catalogs all the ways that Sabrina is not legally connected to my business. She has never contributed capital, never participated in management decisions, and never been involved in business operations. Steinberg tries a different approach, which tells me he's starting to understand that the frontal assault isn't going to work. What about spousal support based on the lifestyle that was established during the marriage? He asks. Surely there's an argument for maintenance based on the standard of living that was supported by corporate income. Nor clicks to another slide that shows 2 parallel columns of numbers, and I can see Sabrina's face go pale as she realizes what she's looking at. Mr. Luo's personal income from the corporation is documented here, Nor says, pointing to the left column, which shows a modest salary that's appropriate for someone managing a small business. Corporate distributions, when they occur, are based on business performance and are separate from personal compensation. The right column shows what Sabrina has been spending over the past 2 years, and the numbers tell a story that's probably not what she was hoping to hear. Ms. Quinn's personal expenses, Nor continues, have been funded through the joint marital account, which receives a predictable monthly transfer from Mr. Luo's personal income. She turns the laptop back around and pulls out a thick folder that's labeled Marital Assets Inventory, which brings us to what actually constitutes marital property subject to division, she says, and she opens the folder with the kind of ceremony that people use when they're about to deliver news that no one wants to hear. The inventory is disturbingly short. Sabrina's personal checking account, which contains about $3,000. A modest 401k from her previous job, which she stopped contributing to years ago. Some jewelry that might be worth a few $1,000s if you could find someone willing to pay retail prices for used luxury accessories. And the joint checking account, which currently contains just enough money to cover household expenses for about 2 weeks. That's it, Sabrina asks, and her voice is barely above a whisper. That's it, Marisol confirms. Everything else, the house, the cars, the furniture, the art, even the espresso machine, is corporate property that has no connection to the marital estate. I pour myself a glass of water from the pitcher that someone thoughtfully placed on the table, and I notice that my hand is completely steady. After 2 years of planning for this moment, after months of watching Sabrina build whatever fantasy she'd constructed about our shared future, it's almost anticlimactic to see it all reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet and legal precedents in a binder. Sabrina's hand shakes when she reaches for her own glass. The ice cubes make tiny clinking sounds that seem unnaturally loud in the suddenly quiet room. I need some air, she says finally. Through the window, I can see her standing on the porch, staring at nothing in particular while her phone buzzes with calls she's not answering. The beautiful thing about consequences is how they tend to arrive all at once, like a perfectly choreographed disaster where every moving part hits its mark exactly when it's supposed to. By 6 o'clock that evening, Trent's phone starts buzzing with the kind of insistent frequency that usually means someone's about to have a very bad day at work. He steps outside to take the call, and through the window I can see him pacing around my front yard. Excuse me, the corporate property's front yard, making the kind of hand gestures that people make when they're trying to explain why something that looks really bad isn't actually as bad as it looks. Turns out it's worse than it looks. Compliance department, he says when he comes back inside, and his face has gone that particular shade of pale that people get when they realize their professional life is about to become much more complicated than they'd planned. They want to see me first thing tomorrow morning about some kind of conflict of interest disclosure that I apparently should have filed, but didn't. Marisol doesn't even look up from her legal pad when she responds. Dating a married woman while advising her on financial matters that could affect your own living situation probably qualifies as a personal conflict that should have been reported to your firm's ethics board, she says with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. Most financial advisory firms take that kind of thing pretty seriously. The call had apparently been from Trent's supervisor, who'd received some very detailed documentation about Trent's recent living arrangements and his failure to disclose potential conflicts of interest when providing advice to clients whose personal situations might affect his own financial well-being. Someone, and I have no idea who, had apparently taken the time to compile a comprehensive report on Trent's recent activities and submit it to his firm's compliance department along with what sounded like a very thorough analysis of relevant ethical guidelines. Sabrina's having her own communication problems, though hers are more about the sudden and complete silence from people who used to return her calls immediately. Claudia Reyes, the lifestyle guru who'd been so enthusiastic about kitchen renovations and new arrangements just a few days ago, has apparently developed a case of selective amnesia when it comes to remembering Sabrina's phone number. Her texts are going unanswered, her calls are going straight to voicemail, and her carefully curated social media posts are getting the kind of polite non-engagement that people use when they want to distance themselves from someone without making it obvious. The other members of Claudia's elevation circle are following suit with the kind of coordinated abandonment that suggests they've all received the same memo about maintaining appropriate social distance from complicated situations. These are women who built their entire social identity around surrounding themselves with success and aspiration, and apparently discovering that one of their members has just been revealed to have less actual wealth than a typical community college student makes them nervous about their own carefully maintained images to Mrs. Donnelly, my elderly neighbor who's been watching this whole drama unfold from her front porch like it's her personal entertainment system, doesn't even try to hide her satisfaction when she sees Sabrina loading suitcases into a rideshare vehicle. "Told you that boy was quiet for a reason," she calls out. And there's something deeply satisfying about the way her voice carries across the neighborhood. Mrs. Donnelly has been living next door for 30 years, and she has the kind of radar for relationship dynamics that comes from decades of watching people's lives play out in driveways and front yards. The rideshare takes Sabrina to Trent's apartment, which turns out to be a studio in one of those buildings that markets itself as urban living for young professionals, but which actually means expensive shoebox with pretensions. Apparently, the plan had been for Trent to give up his lease and move into what they'd assumed would be their shared house. But corporate asset seizure has a way of disrupting even the best-laid domestic plans. 2 days later, when it becomes clear that Trent's studio apartment isn't quite large enough for two people who are both dealing with the kind of stress that comes from having your entire life plan collapse in the space of 72 hours, Sabrina moves again. This time it's to her sister Myra's sofa, which represents the kind of lifestyle downgrade that's probably difficult to explain to the elevation circle, assuming any of them were still taking her calls. Rafi drives by the house on Thursday evening, honks his horn once in what I choose to interpret as a victory salute, and for the first time in 3 days, I actually exhale completely. There's something deeply satisfying about sitting in my own living room, in my own house, drinking coffee from my own espresso machine, without having to worry about whose bathrobe is hanging in my bathroom or whose breakfast plans are disrupting my morning routine. The first conference with Sabrina's divorce attorney goes about as well as you'd expect, when one side comes prepared with binders full of documentation and the other side comes prepared with righteous indignation and a fundamental misunderstanding of corporate law. Judge Martinez, who apparently handles enough of these cases to recognize the difference between legitimate marital property disputes and fishing expeditions, schemes through our asset documentation with the speed of someone who's seen this particular movie before. "Counsel," she says to Steinberg after about 10 minutes of reviewing our paperwork, "your client appears to have confused brand recognition with actual ownership. The court sees no basis for claiming marital property rights to assets that are clearly held by a separate corporate entity. She orders immediate vacation of the property and non-interference with corporate assets, which is legal language for get out and don't touch anything on your way out. She also notes that any future attempts to claim ownership of clearly documented corporate property could result in sanctions, which is legal language for don't waste the court's time with this nonsense again. Trent's firm places him on administrative leave pending a full review of his client relationships and disclosure practices, which is corporate language for we're going to figure out how much trouble you've gotten us into before we decide whether to fire you quietly or fire you loudly. His supervisor apparently wasn't impressed with Trent's explanation that he'd been providing informal advice rather than formal financial planning services, especially since informal advice that affects your own living situation still qualifies as a conflict of interest under most professional ethics codes. That be why the end of the week, my house is silent again except for the sound of my prototype equipment humming in what used to be the master bedroom and is now my expanded workshop space. I roll my latest packaging design, a closed-loop fiber tray that might finally solve the foam container problem that's been plaguing the deli industry, into the bedroom and start sketching improvements. The irony isn't lost on me that the room where Sabrina used to complain about my work schedule is now the room where that work is going to continue expanding, probably into markets and applications that she never bothered to understand when she had the chance. My phone buzzes with a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail and keep sketching. Whatever it is can wait until I finish solving this particular engineering problem. Some arrangements are more permanent than others. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the exact same spot where Trent used to hold court in my bathrobe, except now I'm sketching designs for a revolutionary closed-loop fiber packaging system that could potentially replace every piece of styrofoam in every deli case in America. The irony of this location isn't lost on me. The kitchen island where my wife's boyfriend once ate my breakfast while wearing my clothes is now my primary workspace for building something that could change an entire industry. The divorce paperwork came through with the kind of bureaucratic efficiency that makes you appreciate living in a society where legal processes actually work, even if they take forever. Clean, quick, and mind-numbingly boring, which is exactly how I wanted it. No drama, No contested hearings, no angry depositions where people yell at each other about who deserves what. Just signatures and filing fees, and the kind of procedural tedium that transforms life-changing events into paperwork. Sabrina received her share of what the court determined was legitimate marital property, which turned out to be roughly equivalent to what most people spend on a decent used car. Her personal checking account, the remnants of her 401k, some jewelry that appraised for less than she'd hoped, and half of the joint checking account, which wasn't much since I'd always kept our shared expenses modest. The total came to just under $15,000, which is probably not what she was expecting when she decided to restructure our marriage around her new lifestyle goals. The house is mine, officially and completely, along with the cars, the furniture, the art collection that Sabrina spent years curating, and most importantly, the peace of mind that comes from knowing exactly who owns what. No more wondering whether my business decisions need to be filtered through someone else's financial priorities. No more calculating whether corporate investments will affect domestic harmony. No more pretending that building something meaningful is somehow less important than maintaining appearances at dinner parties I never wanted to attend in the first place, that I've started making bread on Sundays, partly because I enjoy the process and partly because Mrs. Donnelly mentioned that she misses the smell of home baking since her husband died last year. Every Sunday evening, I walk across the yard with a fresh loaf, and we sit on her porch talking about neighborhood gossip and the state of the world. Last week, she asked me to fix her porch light, which had been flickering for months, and I spent an hour rewiring her fixture while she told me stories about the previous owners of my house and their various domestic dramas. "Your arrangement seems to be working out better than theirs did," she said while I was tightening the wire nuts, and there was something deeply satisfying about being known in the neighborhood as the guy whose arrangement actually works. The business keeps growing in ways that surprise even me. We hired 2 apprentices from the local community college, kids who are studying environmental science and sustainable technology and who look at our prototype equipment like it's the key to solving the world's packaging problems. Maybe it is. They ask questions that push me to think differently about applications I hadn't considered, and their enthusiasm reminds me why I started this whole thing in the first place. I also established a scholarship in my mother's name at the community college, funding tuition for students who want to study sustainable technology but can't afford the full cost of their education. The first recipient is a single mother who's going back to school after working retail for 15 years, and she sends me progress reports every semester like I'm a proud relative. In a way, I suppose I am. We're all part of this weird extended family of people who think technology should solve problems instead of creating them. The prototype I'm working on tonight could be the breakthrough we've been building toward for years. It's a fiber-based container that's strong enough to hold hot soup, waterproof enough to handle salad dressing, and completely biodegradable in standard composting conditions. More importantly, it can be manufactured using existing equipment with minimal modifications, which means adoption could happen quickly once we prove the economics work. My phone buzzes with a call from an unknown number, the same unknown number that's been calling every few weeks for the past 2 months. I let it go to voicemail like I always do, because whatever Sabrina wants to discuss at this point probably isn't worth the disruption to my evening routine. The voicemail will be polite and carefully neutral, asking if we can catch up or have a conversation about moving forward. And I'll delete it without responding like I've deleted all the others. Some conversations don't need to happen. Some bridges are supposed to stay burned. I pour myself another cup of coffee from the machine that Sabrina always claimed was too complicated, but which I've finally learned to use properly, and I go back to my sketches. The fiber alignment in the container walls needs to be precise if we want the structural integrity to hold up under stress, and I think I've figured out how to achieve that consistency during the molding process. Outside, the neighborhood is settling into its evening rhythm. Mrs. Donnelly's porch light, the one I fixed last week, is casting a warm circle of light across her front yard. The couple 2 houses down is walking their dog, the same route they take every night at the same time. The teenager across the street is practicing skateboard tricks in his driveway, the sound of wheels on concrete creating a steady percussion that's somehow soothing rather than annoying. This is what I was building toward all along, even when I didn't know it. Not just the business success or the financial security, though those are nice. Not just the satisfaction of solving technical problems or creating something that might actually make the world a little bit better, though that matters too. What I was really building toward was this: the quiet satisfaction of sitting in my own house, working on something I care about, surrounded by a life that makes sense and fits together without requiring constant negotiation or compromise. The sun is setting through the kitchen window, painting everything in that golden light that makes ordinary moments feel significant. I roll my latest prototype design across the island where Trent once sat in my bathrobe, and I think about Sabrina's words from that morning 6 months ago: accept the new arrangement. I did accept it, just not the way she thought I would. My arrangement involves discipline and paperwork, and the kind of quiet power that comes from understanding exactly where you stand and what you own. It involves a business worth $10.3 million that exists because I chose to build something meaningful instead of just maintaining appearances. It involves apprentices who are excited about changing the world and neighbors who know they can count on me to fix their porch lights and scholarship recipients who send thank you notes that I keep in a file labeled "Reasons This Matters." Most importantly, my arrangement involves the freedom to sit in my own kitchen on a Sunday evening, working on problems that actually interest me, without having to wonder who's going to walk through the door wearing my clothes and eating my breakfast. That I think I'm going to like this arrangement just fine.